training and then an hour of hands-on consulting, support, coaching, etc. And they're all app founders.
Okay. So are they all customers slash they use your services to go and help promote and build the app?
Yeah. So founders come into our community to get 10,000 downloads and 20 investor introductions. That's our promise when they come into our group. And I help them week over week. We have like a course that goes through different, steps of setting up and launching an app from ads to, email, SMS, retention marketing to influencers, et cetera. And it just gives them a recipe that if they just check these boxes, they'll hit 10,000 downloads in about 3 months. And then from there, we help them line up 20 investor introductions, another, step-by-step process. And it's funny because I was an app founder for a long time. I founded 2 apps myself, and I just made these same common mistakes over and over, particularly, when you're a founder and you're listening to everything coming out of Silicon Valley and San Francisco about like, hey, just go raise $2 million and explode your app to 1 million users and then you'll be successful. It's like they're not focusing on the apps making money, but 99% of people aren't in Silicon Valley, right? 99% of apps are not funded by venture capitalists. So they follow the recipe, but they're not using the same fundamentals or the same setup. And so they don't monetize their app. They don't make money, and then they do what I did with my first app, which was invested too heavily in the marketing, but didn't have the monetization going, so I wasn't making money on these users. So that's the first thing I always teach these founders is like, let's put monetization, let's have this thing be making you money. Your marketing is not supposed to cost you, it's supposed to make you money. And so that's the most common mistake I see founders making today.
Yeah, I think that is a big deal because we invested in a software that we actually founded it. And it was a software that allowed you to pay the truck drivers, next day. Or saying it was first started out as next day, then it started out as instant. So they would deliver a load and we transfer them the money, right? And then it would read all the BOLs, digitize them, check them, quality control, and then get it ready for payment, and then we pay them. And so we brought on some partners that ran a huge financing company because the other part of the business is who's going to finance that portion from when the customer pays, because you're paying the trucker the same day, but you haven't got paid from your customer for 30, 60 days, right? So you need a factoring company to be in between. And so we were also the finance company that would have been in between. So we partnered with some guys out of Canada that had a big factoring business. But, I think if me and my partner would have ran it the whole time without having partners, it would have been successful. But it took a lot longer to build and scale. And then they had that same mentality. They weren't trying to make money. Like I've always started a business and it's like, how do you make money? It's like they were trying to raise money. And so they were hiring, we need a CFO, we need a CEO, we need this. I'm like,
investment.
I'd be on call. I'm like, yeah, because they're really trying to take it to an investment bank, trying to be presentable, wanted the right team. I'm sitting there like banging my head against the wall. I was like, you're spending all this money. And I was like, why don't we just make it to make money?
Doing everything but making money.
Yeah, it's
literally.
And so I think that goes back to what you said about the Silicon Valley like mindset. It's like, okay, I just need to get it to a point where I can raise $2 million. Well, everyone out there, let me tell you how hard it is to really raise that money, especially now, right? I mean, they're really going to look is like, are these guys going to be able to make money? It's not all about, oh, this is a great idea. Like they don't, that's not.
That era is behind us.
Yeah. I think people think that it's easier to raise money when they do. And so they spend all this money, they build this product, they think they have a great idea. They go try to raise money and people are like, well, you don't make money. Where's your business? Like, what's the business? It's like, yeah, it's an okay idea, but who's going to execute it? And does it make money or is it going to make money in the future? And so I think that's where people have that mindset. I mean, I've been through it just because I had some partners that thought like that.
Yeah. I call it the lottery mindset among tech founders because they see these 1 in 1,000 founders winning big. Yeah, they see these unicorns and like, that could be me. And sadly, that was me. I was thinking like that when I founded my first app. But what you don't realize is you're only hearing 1 out of 1,000 stories. Yes. And the other 99% need to be real businesses, right? Need to make money. And so it's just this unhealthy mindset that I'm going to strike big. And business doesn't work like that. Business is brick by brick.
Yes.
You know?
And, I do think that what you're teaching these guys is actually really good, because that is the foundation of business. It's like, hey, how are we going to monetize this? How are we going to make money? And it's not always about like raising the dollar to get to the next round. So
the business should be self-sustaining, right?
Yeah.
It should bring in more money than it's putting out. It's really that simple. Like the thing is like when you get to a point where you know which are your best customers, that's a big focus in the program. It's called split testing. And we, for example, run 10 ads that are all the same except the message is different. We see which of these 10 messages gets the highest click-through rate, right? So by doing that, we're getting closer and closer to their ICP, or their ideal customer profile, AKA the customer who is the most profitable. If boomers give you $1 back for every dollar you spend, but millennials give you $5 back for every dollar you spend, you want to know and target millennials, of course, depending what your app is, right? And so that methodology and thinking helps them not only figure out who loves their app the most, but it also helps them figure out who's going to be the most profitable. If you don't have monetization built into it, there's no financial proxy, or there's no proxy of what's a good user. Somebody could spend a lot of time in the app, but maybe they don't spend any money in the app.
Yep.
And so, and what's funny is when I get these guys, these founders, guys and girls, into our group, and I start coaching them through this stuff and helping them, do this brick by brick approach where they go through split testing to figure out what age, gender, location, message, creative their target customer responds the most to. I face resistance from them. They're like, oh, this is hard. I just want to do this stuff that feels good or looks cool. And so I can already see that built-in resistance of wanting to do what feels good rather than what the business needs. And so I coach them through that, and I show them the big picture. Like, hey, once you understand this, you'll be putting $1 in, you'll be getting $3 out, right? If you had an ATM that gave you $3 every time you put $1 into it, you would go to that ATM every damn day, right? So that's it. There's this baked in mindset among a lot of, not just tech founders, but a lot of founders, seeing people on Instagram, with all their flashy stuff. It's like, I could just have that if I just strike big, but it's not like that. And I really like the name of the show, The Success Formula, because, I was actually thinking about that term in the ride over here. And thank you again for all your hospitality, having me on here. The success formula, it's like, I think of it like an investment, right? Your mind is an investment, just like stocks are an investment, right? If you follow Warren Buffett's guidance, you are dollar cost averaging in. You're putting $100 a week into a given stock, right?
Yep.
No matter what's going on, you're just investing a little bit all the time. And of course, if it compounds, right? Like if you look at a investment calculator, you put $100 a week in right now, it's worth like $1 million by the time I'm 60, right? Same thing with your mind, right? And same thing with the way that success works. It just compounds over time, right? So you just have to patiently and consistently invest in your mind and in yourself. And then, of course, it compounds. And then the more investments that you make, the bigger your investments are. So back in the day, I was investing 10 grand to build my first app. Now I'm investing 100 grand to build a better app, right? Next time I make a bet, it's going to be $1 million investment, but the payoff on $1 million is 10 million. The payoff on 100 grand is 1 million, right? Or whatever.
Yep.
So the economics just get more in your favor. You gain more leverage. And so that's why, even if you're at a down point in your career, as long as you've been consistently investing, you just keep dollar cost averaging into yourself. You keep investing in yourself, and eventually it accumulates. I mean, I'm sure you can speak to that from your own experience, but like there are dark phases in business. Yeah. But those are just the phases where you took a bigger bet. That's the time where you're got $1 million on the line instead of 100 grand on the line this time.
It's all relative, kind of, at some point. No, I agree with that 100%. And I like the business model because you are showing people actually how to run a real business and not just try to raise money, right? And, if people have that mindset, I think going into it, they're going to be a lot more successful in the long run, right? Or the percentage of people that you deal with are going to be a lot more successful. Maybe tell somebody or tell everybody how you got into even the tech game, or, did you grow up in tech and were you always good at it, or, what happened in high school or after high school and how you got into this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think we find our way into different businesses in unique and unexpected ways. But going all the way back to when I was a child, computers were new, yeah. Right? And I remember at the time when I was a kid and we got our first computer as a family, thinking like, wow, this is going to be the future. In that moment, my older sister learned HTML and CSS, so she started coding right off the bat. I was like, damn, I should have started it back then, but that was kind of like my exposure to it. And then when I got into, I went through my undergraduate, I did it in design. So, kind of had this relationship point with software. And then my graduate degree I did in business and marketing. So those two kind of came together nicely for technology. And I went to work at a corporate company, Comcast, Xfinity, and they had a lot of technology in that company. But it was during that time, actually, I had a conflict with these friends of mine from college who had come up with an app that they wanted to build. And they were just like dragging their feet. They weren't like following through on stuff. And the project was just losing steam. And so I just took it for myself and I said, all right, I'm going to go build this company. And so I went and built the fitness rewards app it was called VEA. And so that's actually how I got into it. And all I had was the design background. So I didn't really know anything about technology.
How did when you say built the app, did you start hiring your own tech team, or did you know enough back then where you could do some of it and then you learned some of it and then you hired your own tech team?
Yeah, so I remember trying to code Google Maps into my app, and oh my God, that was just incredibly like beyond me, right? So I was like, okay, there's no way I can actually code this. And I knew HTML and JavaScript and stuff at the time. And so I hired a team in India. This is another so many great mistakes I made along the way, but I hired a team in India. I paid him like 10 grand, and I was a designer. So I designed the app. I gave him the screens that I wanted developed, and then, the sequence or the UX, gave them to him. And he said, I'll do it for 10K. I had 10K saved up because I was working in, corporate at the time. And he built the app exactly to spec. He built it in like 3-4 months. So he met his timelines, his specifications, which is very rare for a first time.
I was about to say that. I think if you've done it before, it's a struggle for sure on finding the right contractor basically that can build it.
So many things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
Everything from the server side setup to the UI, et cetera. And I thought he had done an amazing job on it because I was managing him like a hawk. Like I was very aggressive. I was like on top of him every day. And you have to be like that with developers. I mean, really anybody you work with in business, I think, if they're a vendor, right? But when I hired a co-founder, I don't know, like a year into the business, he showed me that the backend had no security setup. Everyone's passwords and information were available in a spreadsheet that was unprotected. Yeah. So anybody could have just like hacked the platform and gotten all my users' data. At the time, I had like 15,000 users on the app. So I'm like, oh my God. So, you kind of like learn expensive lessons like that. And that was kind of my exposure to like, there's a whole tech stack here, right? It starts at the server and the database level, and it goes up to the systems administration, like the hardware communicating with the software, and then the software communicating with the device, and the device showing what you see on screen. So there's like 7 stacks to the tech setup, right? Or 7 layers to the tech stack. And I realized how in above my head I was and how much you could get taken by a developer. And I see it every day. Clients and founders come to me all the time and they're like, hey, our first developer sucked. I mean, I'd say like 8 out of 10.
We had 3.
3 developers went bad.
Different. No, well, not bad, but us not having a tech background. I have a good one now that I've worked with for a long time, but in that project, and again, we had partners. So, the first developer we had, we actually built it. The one we put in, when we formed the partnership actually worked. It just needed the finance portion. That was it. And then the developer they brought in, because they didn't really, weren't really fond of this guy.
Pause for a second. They didn't build monetization into the first version of the app.
You know what? The first version of the app that we built was internal. So it was for our company.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good start.
Yeah. So we were the only ones using it. It was more to go test it out, made sure it worked before we tried to because you're talking about high volume in transactions. And we wanted to make sure that everything was going well before we put some company on the platform. And, you're talking about, $3 to $5 million a month just for one customer.
Wow.
And so them not getting paid would have been a huge deal. And you're talking about, getting kicked off a job if the truckers quit or, whatever ends up happening. So we built that. It worked well. It's when we tried to incorporate the financial piece where we tried to bring it, we could have outside factoring companies come in and participate in the deals. And so that's where they brought in their own developer, went through 2 different people. This time goes by for so long and they're telling you they're doing all this stuff. And even the person that was managing them, and then come to find out, it's like, oh, it's built on the wrong platform when you talk to somebody else, or, oh, this is the wrong tech stack to do what you're trying to do. And it's like, I don't know how, and you wasted so much money in a whole 8 months, which in tech, it's like, that's a long time.
It's a lifetime. Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I've been there. I'm sure there's probably 100 other people listening to this that have done the same thing if they've ever been down the software road. It's really tough.
Yeah, and you also like you don't know what you don't know, right?
It's
Like
me, yeah.
the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. And after the first time, whether you're building a company or building an app, you just see like, damn, I wasn't even qualified to manage this guy. I didn't know what questions to ask him during interviewing, like what software stack he's using. Even if I did ask him, I wouldn't know if it was the right stack, given all of the future permutations of this app. So I just, that's why when I meet founders, I'm like, look, let me help you put some guardrails on this. Let me help you interview your developers. Let me make sure that like we're managing them in a smart way and we're building for the future, not just today. Because I mean, tech, it seems like a very pliable thing, but when you build software, let's just say you invest $100,000 into it, like that's your software. It's if you want to modify it and have it do something else, you could spend $20,000 more just to get the new functionality that you wanted because you didn't initially design that in. So yeah, it's a high risk game, very high risk in that reason.
It really is. And where me and my partner have endless app ideas, but it really is about the execution. And, I know how to build pretty much any other type of business, but the tech, I'm definitely not super savvy in. And so that was the frustrating part. If I go to a real estate project or if I go to something else, walk into a company, like I can analyze anything, go and manage any person pretty much in any position of that company, or a real estate project where I show up and I'm like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. And in tech, I can't show up and say, hey, like I look through your code, we're in Slack, like you're not hitting your goals. I forget what they call it, but like, there's no way sprints, I could go in there. Yeah, sprints. And there's no way I could go in and manage it. And that was the really frustrating part for me because I couldn't just show up.
You can't fix it.
Yeah, it was just terrible. And so you're relying 100% off these people. And once you go down a path with a developer, you're kind of like in bed with them for a little bit because they're coding it their way, which everybody's a little bit different. And so it's really, really tough, man. Hats off to you for just making that successful because it was a tough one for me for sure.
Yeah, I think it caught me by surprise, but now that I've gotten my initiation, you could say I'm past the hump. But after going to work with much larger tech companies, like for example, we helped launch TikTok in 2019 and through 2021, and I would say 80% of their budget went to engineering. The majority at that time of their investment was going into their algorithm development.
So it's growing organically.
Well, are you talking about the platform?
Yeah, the platform itself. Yeah. I mean, they weren't investing a ton in marketing. They were putting it all into engineering.
No, they were investing a lot in marketing. They had like over $76 billion invested at that point.
Wow.
Even the Chinese government invested in them, which I can see why people are sketchy about that, right? Yeah. But our particular engagement was $225K for our first month with them. So that's for a marketing budget off the bat with a new vendor. They found total strike of luck. They Googled growth hackers in Los Angeles, and that just happened to be what was in our SEO terms on our website. Wow. They inquired, again, total strike of luck. Nobody could have predicted that, right? They emailed us. We were able to close a deal with them.
And then you also had to execute though. So I'm sure they would have kicked you off the job really quick if you didn't execute, right?
That's why they only gave us 30 days.
Oh, I got you. Okay. So they didn't sign a contract and they just wanted to see how y'all were going to perform.
It was a 30-day contract. I mean, it was, they made us get $1 million in insurance. They had like a 50-page MSA, master service agreement with us. But the funny thing about that project is they brought in 5 marketing agencies. One of them happened to be the building next door to mine. I didn't even realize it. It's a company called Zephyr. And they hired 5 marketing agencies for the job. At week 2, 3 of the agencies had refunded the money. And then by week 4, the 4th agency had a demand to refund the money because they hadn't been able to get the results that TikTok was looking for. And we were the last ones left. And at like day 30, we had like 400 downloads. Our promise was 22,500 for that first month. And we're like, I don't know what we're going to do. Our cost per install needed to be like $4 to be profitable, and we were paying $400. And so then we had to get scrappy, and we asked for an extension. We're like, please, like, just give us another week. We'll figure it out. Because we were the small guys. Our company was like 25 people at the time compared to like 500-person company next door. And they gave us the extension. We stayed up until 2 a.m. researching different ideas for how to get them the results they were looking for, because we needed to cut costs by like 100x, right? It was like $400 versus $4. And they gave us the extension. We we pulled the all-nighter because my partner was in New Zealand, so we were just working through the night, and all the calls were with Beijing anyway, so we were just working middle of the night anyway because their time zone's opposite. And we found a software that we could plug in. So the whole campaign was based on influencers. So we recruited 200 influencers in that 30 days. Crazy to do that at that time.
What platforms, or was it just a cross platform like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube? Was it?
They were majority Instagram.
Okay.
Because TikTok was trying to steal traffic from Instagram.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
So they had us recruit those 200 influencers from Instagram. And that was really the only platform that was that popular for influencers at the time. And we had them post to their stories, and they were getting like 5% of their audience reached, and the click-through rate was like 0.3% on those stories, and the economics just didn't make enough sense. We were paying the influencers too much and not getting enough results. And one of those late night sessions, we found a software that plugged into all their profiles and could shoot direct messages from them. So we had 200 profiles we were logged into, from cars, sports, fitness, fashion, DIY, dance, barbers, stylists, makeup artists, all these different niches. And this ultimately became how we launch apps today. But we had all these different sub audiences. And so we shot direct messages out from them, and open rate on direct messages on IG at the time, there's no, general inbox at the time. It was 85%. So 85% of people were seeing the messages. Click-through rate, 33%. Because think about it, like you got you're a super fan of Tony Robbins. He shoots you a message. He's like, Shawn, I discovered this new platform called TikTok. I got a video that's going viral on there. Check it out now. And we would even put like the first 2 seconds of the video so they could get like a sneak peek. They click it, and that led to a 33% click-through rate, which was like 100 times better than the 0.3 we were getting from story posts. Ultimately, that led to get them 18,000 downloads that night. We saved the engagement, continued to do business with them for 2 years after that. Running that same strategy, we launched it in UK, USA, Brazil at first, and then we went on to do Ireland, Russia, Thailand, all these, I think we did like 20 countries, because they were trying to like have this groundswell effect. Sure. They wanted to grow everywhere. And so, yeah, that's
what was the budget for that?
The first month was $225,000. They gave us $10 per download. By the way, it was a performance-based contract. That's why everyone was refunding the money, because they weren't getting the results. So they weren't.
Yeah, it didn't make sense for them to put all their people in it.
Exactly. And if they don't get results, they don't get paid.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to refund the client. And we spent $50,000 of the $200,000 budget and testing on shit that didn't work. So we were about to go under as a business at that point. We didn't have much liquidity, And so it started at 22,000 downloads at $10 each, so $225K for the first month. And then they upped it to 30,000 downloads per month, and then they upped it to 36,000 downloads per month. And that's how we grew the engagement with them. We kept delivering more results. I mean, it was basically like an affiliate partnership. We would send them the downloads, they would pay us $10 each. And we were able to get them. I mean, now that it's, so far past, probably okay to talk about it, but we're getting downloads for like $5. We're charging them $10. So we were able to make 50% profit on that. And we, scaled that engagement to like $700,000 a month at one point.
That's great.
And so that's kind of like what put us on the map in terms of apps. And so now today we still apply that methodology, test 100 different audiences, see which ones have the highest click-through rate, lowest cost per acquisition, best return on investment. And those are the winners.
And is it still just a cold DM, I guess, just from...
No. We don't use cold DMs anymore. Those are against policy. They get your accounts flagged.
And then it also goes into like that holding box or whatever anyways, right? That like the...
requests.
Yeah, the request where you have to actually go in and approve it.
Yeah, now it's just spam in there these days.
Yeah, I get the same thing. You look at the same social media guy that it's like from overseas that has like 400,000 followers, and he's like sitting on a car. Yeah. He's like, hey, can I help you? It's like, that's all the ones that go to that box.
It's going to sketch.
Yeah.
The thinking is the same, where we split test a lot of different audiences. We see which ones respond to the content the best, and then we pick out the 20% of winners. Usually 80% are losers and 20% are winners.
What is a good story? Like when you said something about 5% of stories were getting viewed, what is like a good engagement rate for a story? I'm just curious on mine. Like when I'm just trying to learn, like what's like a good engagement rate?
The benchmark has been all over the place these days, but some people are getting millions of views on their stories because Instagram made it so that like people who are not your followers can see your stories. Like it'll show up in location feeds or in the Discover feed, etc. But usually like 5% actually isn't too bad. You know, if
Okay.
you got 100,000 followers and you
Get
get 5,000
people,
views, that's actually pretty solid engagement. But the economics just didn't work with us when we were doing it back then, and just couldn't be profitable.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you on your first app, you build this fitness app. You have the guys from India. What happened after that? Like, I know you said that you trusted them a little bit, and it didn't really work out that well, which happens to a lot of people. What'd you do after that? Like, what was the next step?
Yeah, so because I realized how much I didn't know, I hired a technical co-founder, another Indian guy. He was a good dude though, and he's the one who audited the back end and found those issues. I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and me and my buddies had gotten this penthouse and put a bunch of startups in there. There's like 4 startups being run out of this thing. It's actually pretty damn fun. But the genesis from that was we used the penthouse. We were throwing like New Year's Eve parties, things like that. We were using it for business reasons.
Yeah.
Eventually, this is how Kevin Hart's crew heard about us. It was actually Kanye's production crew, because a bunch of these guys are from Philadelphia, came to one of our parties, and they're like, hey, we want to record a music video up here. And then Charlie, he's Kanye's producer at the time. He came and recorded a music video up there, and his manager was friends with Kevin Hart and then introduced me to him. And so we fixed the issues on the back end of the app, and then I started putting it out there a lot. We were hosting yoga on the rooftop. We were doing runs in the city.
What was the monetization, or what did the app do? And then how were you trying to monetize the things you were doing on that?
So the app gives you rewards for working out. So you would run 2 miles, get a free bottle of water, you get a free lunch, you get a free tank top from these different sponsors. Or you could get like 20% off at New Balance, at Saucony, Red Bull, et cetera. So I had affiliate partnerships with all of these vendors. We would promote their offers. Yeah. And they would pay us a commission.
That's interesting.
But the foolishness in me at the time, I gave a bunch of people no commissions because I wanted to get partners on. That's how I got Saucony and New Balance right from the get-go. They actually gave me like 3 and 7% rev shares. So they were good partners, but some of them didn't have paid partnerships, and I didn't put enough focus on that. Because at the time, I was talking to investors and they're like, just keep it free. You keep up this viral growth, this thing's going to become huge. The other investors are saying, no, we need to monetize this. And so I was being pulled in 2 directions. This is why I don't like working with investors, or at least I want, when I'm working with founders, I want them to have all the power in their hands and be able to take that kind of, information with a grain of salt, because you can't really be independent of the investors if you need them, right? Yeah. It kind of puts you in a needy state of mind.
So how many people would actually use the app and then get to the reward section? So like what percentage of people would do that? So if you had 100 users, like out of those 100 users, would 50 of them go and run the required amount or lift the required amount? I don't know how it works, but then to actually get the reward and actually get a partnership with one of these people and get a t-shirt or whatever they're giving out.
Yeah. So when we just did direct reward for activity, this is the psychology part that's interesting. So if you run 2 miles and you get, let's just say, a $10 value reward,
sure,
the engagement rate was 11%. So out of 100 people, 11 people were using the app per month to do that. We had like 30,000 users at that time. So about, what's 11% of that? Like 3,000 people per month were, 300 people per month were just running to get rewards. And then we turned it into challenges where you could, the person who ran the most miles in the month would win a big pot, like $500 to $1,000. And our engagement went from 11% per month up to 33%. So then the percentage of completed rewards was about 33%.
By offering a bigger, first place, second place, third place reward or something.
It was more than that, because like if you're the type who doesn't like to work out and you can earn $5 or $10 by going for a run or sit on the couch for 30 minutes, most people choose to sit on the couch. And this was the reverse psychology. If you think about the opposite of the numbers, 11% were engaging, so 89% were not engaging. So the majority of people were just like, nah, I don't feel like. You're making fitness feel like work, which was actually the counterintuitive and opposite effect I was trying to have. I was trying to make fitness more fun. But when you bring in the chance factor and they can win a prize and they can compete with each other in a social feed and have a leaderboard,
I was thinking that too.
Then we saw it triple.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. So it'd be cool. Well, it sounds like you did it, but it sounds like if they were competing against their friends, then it would be more people would be more likely to try to do it. It's like, oh, I'm going to win that today or whatever, but it's against their friends and not just their self.
Yeah. People were posting about it on social media. They were like posting their runs and tagging them and calling out their friends.
Do you remember what year that was? Like what year the app?
That was in 2016.
Okay.
And then after that, I got the introduction to Kevin Hart's team, and they said that they wanted to invest because he was really into fitness at the time, and he had just gotten a Nike sponsorship, the only athlete who had a pair of shoes who wasn't an athlete.
Yeah.
And we got a term sheet. He was going to invest $2.2 million, and then he put it through legal, and Nike just killed the deal. They're like, absolutely not. You're not putting your name on another running app, right? They had Nike Run at the time, and he was on the face of Nike Run at the time. I don't know how I didn't dodge that one, but that killed the deal.
Yeah,
and so
sucks.
at that point, I hadn't monetized. I had spent over $100,000 of my own money marketing and growing the app. And at that point, I just had to sell it because I was unable to sustain it. And so if I had been monetizing that whole time, I would have 4 years of revenue coming in at that point, because I was 4 years into the app at that point. So that was my big mistake. And if I could have sustained a little longer, I probably could have figured out some kind of deal with Kevin, but it was just too late. I ran out of runway and I had to throw in the towel.
Yeah, it's almost like if you're monetizing it and you prove to somebody it's a real business, you actually get money a lot easier if you did need to go get it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the funny part, is people seem to think that when you monetize, investors aren't going to want to invest.
It's the opposite. You have more people.
Exactly.
You have more people. It's like, wow, this guy figured it out, right? And it's like, if we can scale this, we already know the numbers. It's like you can already see the math, and it's like, okay, so we just need to invest to give it a little bit of fuel on the fire, and then just grow it. And so I don't know. I don't know why people don't think that way, but it is a good way to think. And if you're teaching your founders that, then that is the right way to go, because just they're going to be way more successful than instead of basically like dreaming of some huge unicorn exit one day. Like, go make money, and people will give you money. Trust me. If you figure out how to make money with an app, there is a lot of people that will invest and give you money.
Yeah. And even if you're of the belief that, like, I don't want to be monetizing for whatever reason, you just don't tell the investors.
Yeah.
But you do in the background, you figure out the economics of the app, you figure out how to make this machine work, because ultimately it needs to be a profit machine. So
sure. At least prove that the concept works.
Yeah. And that's why we focused on getting them to 10,000 downloads, because once they have 10,000 downloads, they have statistically significant data to prove the business case. So you can say, hey, I got 10,000 downloads.
I was wondering where the number came from.
7,000 registered users, 500 free trials, 250 paid users. And so that's all statistically significant. So if it works with 1 0, it'll work with 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros. So it shows the scalability of the platform, and then investors can say, okay, this business pays $10 to get a customer, makes $40 off that customer. We can scale this.
Yeah, easy to understand. From an investment standpoint, especially when they're going to give a presentation, you probably help them with all that too, right? Like, do you help them put together all the presentations?
I have a template deck, and I have a process for outreach to investors that puts them in like the power position.
Yeah, no, that's like really beneficial. Only from me, having a lot of app ideas through since I was younger, and just never having the right team or the right person to go and like try to execute on it. So that's really cool.
Think of reviewing 150 different app business models and launching them, seeing all the economics of their app from the inside out. Now I can look at it and like I can know within like a second, hey, this is where it needs to be fixed in order to grow profitably, and so on. And so
yeah, that's really awesome. So you're at the point you sold the app, after you couldn't monetize it, and then where'd you go after that? So your first business didn't work out. Then what happened?
Yeah, that was my first proper entrepreneurship business, and that was pretty humbling. I was working like 12, 14-hour days, and I had an anxiety attack. And so that at that point I started like meditating and, getting better into my mental health and stuff. But from there I started K&G Growth Hackers, which is the marketing agency that ultimately went on to serve TikTok and Triller and some of these big app clients. That's where all of the 100+ app launches came from.
What made you want to go, like, what gave you the idea after you sold the app and you're like, what am I going to do? What gave you the idea to go start a marketing agency and not just build another app that you can monetize?
Yeah, I mean, look, innovation is born of necessity. At the time, I was out of capital, and I had a lot of intellectual capital because I knew how to do these growth hacking strategies I was practicing on my first startup. But I had a lot of time and little money, and agencies are the perfect model for that, right? You can just go start doing services. And,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, and you can charge a pretty high ticket. That business ultimately, like, made like 50% margin on most of what we did, and
50% margin before or after like labor and
like net.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a performance engagement that's paying you $200,000 a month, and your fixed costs, like at the time, my payroll was about $40,000 a month, and if we scaled up and did $1 million in revenue, like let's just say $500K was profit, like we're still walking away with $400,000 in net.
How do you keep your people? So to scale a business like that, I know that that's the hard part. I've just heard a lot of people when they have social media marketing agencies, you have all these junior people come in that, get assigned to a new account, right? And then they don't get as good of results as you would get with, maybe the original team or, the top people. So how do you like keep scaling after
results?
Yeah.
Quality.
Yes.
It's a perpetual challenge. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. At the time, I was running more of a consultancy, so I was the mainstay. So I had a designer, I had a video editor,
Yeah.
I was buying my own media at the time. So I was actually still the marketer doing the execution.
Correct.
And that business model, like I said, it can work well because you can make, big margins, but it's not scalable because you can only take on so many clients.
And that's why I was asking, because I think that's a lot of people, start it with the intention of that, but then they get to a sticking point where the quality, isn't sustained when they try to go. They win all these jobs.
Yeah, you either spread thin or you
Yes.
hire cheap people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that model is just simply not scalable. And so you see mature marketing agencies like the kind of like the big house ones, and the owner is still involved in everything.
Yeah, that's
and
tough.
I was like, I need more leverage than that. So ultimately, we decided to niche down and just do app launches. That's where Viral App Launch, our current agency, came from. Is we couldn't keep scaling wide, so we decided to scale deeper into that space. Then we niche down the agency, and when the agency is niched down, we follow the same process every time. To get the consistent result of 10,000 downloads, we have to have the same process every time. And so when you have the same process every time, it's basically a product instead of a service. So follow the same steps. We just eliminate the amount of human involvement that's needed, and it becomes more process oriented than talent oriented.
So if somebody comes to you, so if I come to you with an app idea, do you help them like start to finish? Hey, this is just my idea, or do they already have to have like a product and a business plan, and then you hire certain developers that help them with that? I mean, how's it work if I came to you with like an app idea?
If you came to me with an idea, I would put you with one of my partners who
Okay.
develop you an app. I have partners who develop apps from anywhere from 10K to 100K or
Gotcha.
up to 200K.
Gotcha. So after it's built, that's when you're going to go launch it, and you're going to do the marketing side of it.
Yeah. The app has to be listed on the App Store. The most successful apps are the ones that already have a few thousand users. Those are the ones that I can have the biggest impact with. If they're in the 0 to 1,000 users range, let's just say, I put them into my Blueprint program, which is like where I'm doing the hand-holding, the consulting, the coaching. And
Because you probably have a lot of bugs at that early stage,
Exactly.
right? So if you try to scale it, there's going to be so much stuff that's going to
wheels
go
fall
wrong.
off.
Yeah, you're going to scale something, and then you're going to run into all these roadblocks and then just waste money.
Yeah.
So I
Exactly.
I
It
understand.
ultimately leads to people losing money. And that's why I'm so preventative of like letting them go ham at the beginning.
So I come to you, I have an app, it's doing okay. I have 1,000 downloads or 1,000 users. And then you said you promise or you guarantee to get them to 10,000
Guarantee
users.
10,000. Yeah.
Okay. And so what happens so that, I come pay you and you don't hit the 10,000, do you just refund the money? And
No, we work for free until we do.
okay.
So let's just say you're 6 months into the engagement, we got 5,000 downloads. My team will work for free until we get you the remaining 5,000.
Sweet. Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's bulletproof enough and it's black and white enough that they can go to their investors and be like, hey, this is the outcome that these guys are going to give us. And they can also just have the confidence knowing that, like, obviously, if we're going to commit to that, we're obviously taking risk in it too,
Apparently you don't probably take every app. I mean, do you pick and choose and say, because if you take all of them, if it's just a bad app or a bad idea or a concept that you can't, monetize, then do you just say, I don't think it's a good fit, or how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'm also kind of curious your vantage point on this, but really there are no bad apps. There's just ones that are unrefined and immature. They're early, right? Like every business, not every business, but the majority of businesses have enough potential to be strong. They just need a lot of refinements and adjustments till they get to that sweet spot. So the ones that are early and need a lot of adjustments, I put them into the Blueprint program. I work hands-on with them so that I can personally be involved. Because if my team's doing it, they're going to follow their steps and their process. They're going to put they're going to put the V8 into your Pinto, regardless of whether that Pinto is ready for it.
Yeah.
So that's why I put them into the hands-on program if they're, pre-launch, and then if they're really ready for scale, if the doors aren't going to fly off when we put jet engine in there, then
I like the business model. I mean, you're setting these guys up, for the best like the best time to be successful. So you're putting them when you're not quite to here and you can't work with them. You're going to give them the step-by-step program to actually get there, to get to the 10,000 downloads. So it's pretty cool. When they get to the 10,000 downloads, what's after that? Do they keep hiring you, or they keep you on staff, or do they just go somewhere else? Like, what happens after the 10,000 downloads?
Yeah, that's step 1 and 2 of our process. We go alpha, beta. So alpha is product focus, beta is marketing focus and audience discovery. The next phase is monetization. So alpha, beta, optimize, monetize is stage 3. That's where we focus on making the app more profitable, test different price points, do split testing, test different models, monthly, annually, quarterly, weekly, daily billing, like what's the best for that audience. And then we really focus on making their app profitable. So that's in the app world, we call it the CAC to LTV, the customer acquisition cost to the lifetime value of the user. So we crank up that lifetime value. In the earlier stages, we're cranking down the customer acquisition costs when we're doing audience discovery. And so we just tweak that ratio till we're about 3x profitability. So like you invest $1, you make $3 back.
Sure.
So that's phase 3. And then phase 4 is virality. And that's where we build a virality engine on the input side and on the output side. So we hire a team of affiliates to promote their platform, typically YouTubers with 10,000 plus subscribers. So we are getting like 1, 2, 3 downloads for every one user that comes on, because we're reaching big audiences, as opposed to paying like $1 for one user through ads. So we increase the input through there, and then on the other side, we take the power users and we create referral programs out of them, so that I'm inviting my friends when I become passionate about the app. So it goes alpha, beta, optimize, monetize, virality is stage 4. So this, the 10,000 user mark happens right in the middle of that at the end of phase 2. And then after phase 4, once we're at that point, we're guaranteeing 100,000 users after the virality stage. Then we take them to raising capital. They can raise capital after phase 2 or after phase 4, just depends what stage they want to raise at. But the fact you asked about that, I think is interesting, because anybody who's raising capital, like my experience doing it, I probably pitched 150 different investors when I was running my fitness app. And it's kind of like dating, right? Like you chase, girl runs away, right? Like you're asking for investment, kind of puts you in a down position, right? Rather than them saying, wow, this is an exciting product, super profitable business, let me get in on that, right? That's the position you as an investor want to be in. You want to find something that's like a golden nugget, right? But as the founder, you also want to be in that power position where it's like, I can either take your money or I cannot, but I'm not begging for it. And so my process basically outlines a Dream 100 list of ideal investors. So I would, if we were doing your app, I would find 100 investors who are in the Houston area, who are at the stage of your app. Angel investors who invest in logistics technology, for example. And then I do an outbound campaign where I generate interest with them. I'd say, hey, we have this logistics app, by a bulletproof 3-time founder who's had 2 exits, and the economics of the app are $100 customer acquisition cost, $2,000 lifetime value. Tell that to a local angel investor who's going to be like, hell yeah, I want to see that. And so we see a really high response rate from that. That's how we guarantee 20 investor introductions. And then as those responses come in, then we put you into the power position. Now you got 20 investors who are inbounding you, and you're like, okay, cool, I can pick from you, blah, blah, blah. And so we do 30 days of outreach where we bring the investors in, LinkedIn, email, and Twitter. Use a software called Log Growth Machine. It's like $100 a month if anyone wants to try it. Really powerful.
And what does that do?
It's automation. So it sends a sequence of 4 messages to the investors via email, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and so basically we're putting a little bait out for them. They're taking the bait, and now we've got all this inbound, all these interested investors. And so then we take it to phase 2, which is the next 30 days, day 30 through 60. We do all the investor meetings. And at that point, we use my investor deck template. We polish it up, get it in good shape. It's a teaser deck. It's only 7 slides long. We don't sell the whole farm to the investors. We only show them the tip of the iceberg. Ultimately, remember, we're trying to put the founder in the power position, right? So they are just showing enough to get the investors excited and, emotional about it, and then kind of pulling back and saying, okay, cool. If you're serious about investing, we're doing a round that's, 90 days long. We have 30% of it filled out. We're looking for smart money investors, whatever. And then we get the term sheets and start bidding them against each other.
Do you have the numbers or remember the percentage of how many apps get invested in currently? Like where you're at on if you've had whatever, I don't know how many customers, but just whatever that percentage is of that actually get an investment. Do you know?
Yeah, I would say, candidly, about 20% of them close an investment. And it can be for a variety of reasons. A lot of people will want to raise capital because they're simply running out of runway, not because their business is in a place where it's investable. And so they just throw a Hail Mary and say, hey, what can I do?
Gotcha.
I've got a case study where I got like a fintech app that raised $1.5 million in a week. And then I've got an anti-bullying app that raised $500,000 in about 30 days. And a bunch of case studies like that. But those startups were ready for that investment. And so
going out to market too early.
Yeah. And I encourage people like, look, at least get statistical significance, at least get those 5,000, 10,000 ideal users. And then you're going to be much more well-positioned with investors.
Are you allowed to say, well, you don't have to say the name of the app, but maybe the industry on like who's been the most successful, or maybe, there's probably one that I'm sure blew up and, either, or how many went public, or how many have exited? Do you know those percentages?
Yeah, well, there's kind of two sides of the spectrum. When we're talking about the biggest clients that we've helped grow, you got TikTok, Triller, Universal Music Group, Monster Energy, et cetera, Xfinity, et cetera.
I guess maybe from
the investment level,
from the viral growth stage, and then maybe just you got the investment for, you introduced them to the investor, and then they're
all happening in real time right now. Like we got one called Frello. It's a peer-to-peer lending app. Really cool founder. I should introduce you to him. His name's Chris, and very successful guy. He's raised $5 million in total for that app, peer-to-peer lending app. But you haven't heard about it yet because they're redeveloping their product. They're about to launch the next iteration of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always thought about that. Like, how do you do just lending to your friend or your whoever, or if you're a dad to your son or your grandson, how does it work? Like, what's the mechanics of it?
His model is really interesting. I know they changed it recently. I'm going to reconnect with him soon here, but he actually texted me today and checked in. But the way his app works today is you're the investor, I'm the borrower. I need $500 to fix my truck. You want to make 20% back on your money in like a week or two. Has an automatic payment mechanism. So I put out a request for a loan. You look through a feed of loans because you're trying to deploy, $100,000 to short-term investments. And then you loan me the money. I pay you back $600 in 2 weeks, and it's on auto pay.
Is there a limit, since it's peer to peer, on the percentage you can ask for your money? Do you know, like a legal limit? Because I guess like usury limits or whatever. But since it's peer to peer, is there regulation or?
I don't know if they built that into their model. I'm sure there's regulation around it, especially for like short-term lending.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was just peer to peer. There's no bank involved. Like, is there a regulation on that? That'd be interesting.
I mean, at $500, their max loans are $2,000.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So it's not like they're like borrowing $200,000 and paying like 30% on that.
And are you just taking a gamble? Like, there's no. I mean, I guess you could take a lien on the truck, but how does that part work? Is like, does the app do anything to give you?
Yeah. So you have to opt into auto pay as a borrower.
Okay.
And so it'll withdraw it from your
prove
account.
Income. Do you have to do? Or is it?
Yeah, it does a credit check. You connect it through Plaid. It'll give you like basically an internal credit score. It'll tell you as the investor what my lendability is. And keep in mind, this is not my business, so I don't want to butcher.
No. Yeah. No, but I like the idea. That's a cool concept. Is there any other
really cool business?
Yeah, like what's the other cool ones right now that you think, or think have really good potential?
Most excited about?
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 app launches going on right now that are for longevity and wellness.
That's cool. Yeah.
Men's health, HRT, hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, GLP-1, Ozempic, those drugs. That space, like, I guess it was a little bit taboo back in the day. Today, to me, I'm like, put it out there. This stuff is changing lives. You got people getting skinny and happy. You got guys feeling more confident, more strong. So those apps are very profitable right now. I think I was telling you that last night. They're making, for example, we have one campaign that does telehealth for those categories, and they pay $5 per customer. They're making $40 average order value. So they're making 8x their money back within the first month of these user acquisitions.
And then it's reoccurring for most of the time, or at least for 90 days or 120 days.
Yeah, their AOV is $40 monthly.
Yeah, that's what I'm
spending on average $40 monthly.
That's
Think about
really
the
good.
lifetime value. If you stick around as a client
Really
for 2
good.
years, you're talking about like what, 24 times $40.
And is it specifically telehealth? Like
That
that's
one
it?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, you just apply on a form on a website. The doctor reviews the queue of, or the backlog of applications and says this person either qualifies or they don't. And that one is for like men's health, so ED, things like that. And if you need to do a call with the doctor, you do, but otherwise they can just give you the prescription, which is pretty crazy to think about. But it's also like, why is this any different than going to see a doctor in person? I guess like maybe you're not doing a physical examination, but I don't see any ethical issue with it personally.
I wonder if they're doing blood work or not, or they're at least like requiring your last blood work.
Oh, the ones that do HRT,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think they have to.
All of that,
Yeah.
As they should.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to see that the longevity space. I mean, I'm calling it longevity, but just because you think, functional wellness is like the awareness has really taken off. Only because it's helped me a shit ton in my life. And we talked about a little bit about it last night. It's like I don't think people know how good they can feel because they've probably been in a place for a long time that maybe they've been, out of shape or the way they eat or, having a bunch of bad habits, drinking and smoking and just like living a certain lifestyle. I just think they've either forgotten or they just don't know how good it could really be. And so it's cool that just to see more companies that are even doing that because, in general, the awareness will get bigger and bigger the more access to information you have, and then also the ease of things like that. Like, because I think a lot of people, even my friends,
I was nervous. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this or to inquire.
It takes somebody, usually telling somebody, I think. And so even a lot of guys I talk to that are, 45 plus and have done really well in their life, they don't know who to talk to. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I didn't know.
It's like, it's like, well, who do you talk to? Like, and they know their friends are doctors.
You feel like it's illegal or weird or taboo,
or you just don't know the right doctor to go to is the biggest one. It's like, who do I? One of my cousin that really well to do. He was asking me about it because he knew I was into it. And he's like, man, I was about to fly to California because the only guy I knew that did all this stuff was like in California. He's like, I said, no, we'll take care of you. Like I can set you up and everything. So that's the thing. They just, nobody knows like who to ask is I think is the biggest problem with guys over 45. It's like, well, who do I go to? And even my business partners in Arizona, they're like, hey, who do we go to? Like, well, they live a suburb of it's like Bullhead. So it's like in the middle of nowhere. They're like, there's probably not a lot of doctors that I would want to go to anyways.
Which
even
is
if
what makes it crazy that you can do it online now.
Yeah. And they're like, look, you've been to all these doctors, who's the best. We're flying to your doctor. And so it's like, okay. And so, I think people want that like comfort level too. It's like, oh, okay, I know a guy that went through the program and,
and my friend's still healthy. Like his hair's not falling out, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of misconceptions and I think out there.
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, look at you.
Yeah.
Like great shape, all your hair, like not even graying.
Not yet.
Skin complexion, like everything is there. It's like, what have we been told? And I just think about the economics of it too. Like my wife is like, honey, we got to pick a health insurance plan. Literally like priority, like 99 on my list. Why? I just never gotten much value from health insurance, except when I wanted to like get a drug or something like that.
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah. Like I have the same thing and I never use it because the stuff that I actually do for longevity to prevent disease, right? Or
it's all I'm
trying to prevent,
post.
But then nobody pays for it, right? Like I have this insurance program, through our company, which we give to all our employees. But no one actually covers anything anyways. Well, some of my employees do.
Oh, the insurance.
Yeah. They don't cover any wellness stuff. And even when you try to get labs, like your like labs, they have to, if they call
they're not covering any of it for me. I'm paying out of pocket for everything. I'm willing to spend like Next Health company I want to start working with on HRT. They charge $400 a month for their premium package. Health insurance for my baby, $800 a month.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I have no problem spending $1,000 a month preventatively on myself, but like to spend it
and also
on
the
intervention,
the problem,
$400 I won't.
The problem is they don't cover a lot of stuff either. So you still end up paying a lot. It's a weird system. I hope, I think over the next couple of years, hopefully there's a lot of change and hopefully, maybe with the administration, they can come in and, they're already kind of trying to take down some of the big insurance companies like, hey, you can't own those middleman companies anymore. And so hopefully we'll see like, maybe a change in, especially in like the prevention space, because that's really what it is. I'm calling it longevity, but it's not. It's like you're trying to prevent.
It's all preventative. Yeah.
Trying to prevent, having low energy. You're trying to prevent getting older, having low bone density and breaking your hip. You're trying to prevent all that stuff. And so you commonly call it longevity. I do the same thing, but it's really like preventative. And it's preventative wellness. It's like, hey, I don't want any of these things to happen to me, so I want to do these things so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think we really saw it with this election. Regardless where you stand, regardless how you feel about RFK, the CEO of United just got gunned down in the streets. Right? People hate the insurance companies, and myself included. I don't have any positive feelings toward them because all they've done is like they give you antidepressants when you're depressed instead of fixing the source of it, right? They give you like the statics that lower your cholesterol instead of dealing with your diet, right? And it's just like people don't trust that. We're smarter than that now.
Well, it's a weird predicament for doctors too, because they've been doing this for the guys that have been in business for 15 years. If the insurance only covers this, that's what they're going to prescribe to people. And so if then they stop covering that and they only cover this, guess what? That's what the doctor's going to. So it's almost like you're kind of steering the doctor, and that's how he can make money to keep his doors open and pay his bills because of what insurance covers.
Guy needs a job.
It's a weird situation. And so, hopefully a lot of it changes, and, we'll kind of see where it goes. It'll be interesting. It'll be really cool. It'll be really cool to see what happens in the space. My mom used to work for a big insurance company. She's a nurse practitioner, but she looked at medical forms this later in her career. She just got tired of doing.
Sorry, no offense intended.
Yeah, it was later in her career, so she just got tired of doing the hospital and the home health and seeing patients. So she went to an insurance company, and I think one time I was complaining about. I was like, "Mom, but my insurance doesn't even cover anything, anyways." And she goes, "Do you know they deny most of it, and the people have to call and call and call, and you have to fight, and then on a lot of claims, it's like deny first, right? Because people like me, I'm just like, oh, whatever, I just throw it. I'm like, okay, well, they didn't cover anything, but for a lot of people, it's a big deal, and then they have to.
I didn't even realize that was fightable.
You have to fight, yeah, you have to go fight, and like just like the guy that, well, from the headlines, I don't know the real story, but the guy that murdered the United guy, I guess he was trying to fight for a claim, but didn't want to wait for like the attorney. And I mean, he was just at, I guess at a breaking point, which still not good to do that. But you can see like where the system's broken. Hopefully they can maybe come in and change some of it. I've said it a lot of times, like the health, it's just in such a bad place that it's going to be hard to fix. And it was political for so long. And that's the other reason. It's like, someone tries to make a change and there's just so much red tape. It's like, how do you change it?
Yeah. But I think what's different this time is like, I think of it like cancer, and this may sound a little fucked up, but sugar feeds cancer and it thrives, right? The healthcare system is fed by people patronizing it, by people like you preventing the patronization of the healthcare system. It's eventually going to lose its legs. And I don't have anything against these people or whatever, but like, I want to feel great personally.
So do I.
And if that means you don't get my business when I'm sick and bedridden and, hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic or whatever, then fine. I'm going to do what's best for my health and my family's health, and I think everybody should.
The problem is, a lot of people, I guess the argument to that, and what people would argue to me, is it's like there's a lot of people that can't afford the preventative stuff because it is all cash pay right now, and there is some people that can't afford it. And I think my argument back to that would be, if you let me audit your life and your finances, I promise you can pay for it.
The best things in life are free.
Yeah, and you also
can walk, you can run, you can do push-ups, you can.
But
do
that,
sit-ups.
And even on the other side of it is, if you do want to go see a functional medicine doctor, or try to go even a step further than just exercising and cutting out processed foods, if I look at somebody's finances and see where they're spending money, probably a 10 out of 10 chance that I can just clean some of that up and replace some bad habits with good habits, and then you have all this free money, and then you can go and really improve your life.
Yeah, the sad part, I think, though, I think of a lot of those people as unintentional victims. They don't know that they've been eating garbage. They don't know that they've been fed garbage. Like, their mental diet has been news and essentially propaganda stuff that has led them into thinking that the food pyramid is the foundation of the food pyramid is like grains, if I recall right. Right? It's carbs.
and paid for by the food companies, right?
By the cereal companies, yeah. Like they're the ones who post that all over their boxes.
Crazy. Yeah, if you really think about it, it was basically a nationwide manipulation. It was like a scam, a manipulation of like in people, back before there was, I guess, new social media. You call it really media now, but legacy media, that's all the information you had, and you could feed it out to the public, and they're like, oh, I guess that's true. I don't, my friends aren't telling me any different. And so, they're giving that stuff to their kids, and then their kids grow up to kind of be in that same lifestyle. And that's the other thing. Like your parents aren't, going and changing the stuff that they did and trying to not prevent their kids from being in that same pathway.
Think about the boomer mindset. It's not a flexible one.
No.
I encourage people to do your own reading on this, right? Like find your own facts. I've come to my own conclusions myself, and they're probably countercultural, but if you think about a company like Monsanto or a conglomeration of grain producers who want to ensure that they are still selling their product, of course, they're going to go lobby Congress to do a campaign around the food pyramid, right? It just makes, when you think about incentives, it just makes sense. And so it's not that surprising when you think about it in that light. And so, of course, their incentive, like these major dairy producers, to encourage you to eat cheese and drink milk and all this stuff, which I love milk. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But like it's those kind of things need to be used in moderation and not in the way that they're like communicating it to us. So
you must eat 2 or 3 servings of this per day because this is the food pyramid, and this,
think of how much money they make on that. You got 300 million Americans who are eating this diet that you've prescribed, which is like 30% grain or 40% grain, right?
And it's also crazy to see the stuff that's coming out to where you see the American ingredients and like all this new facts and like ingredient lists that are coming out, and you see what's overseas, and it's the exact same product and the exact same company, and it's like, okay, how are they able to feed that to Americans and like make their life just miserable? And it's like they wonder why you have all this disease, and it's like you're kind of starting early on in your life, like poisoning people, and then they don't know any different, and so then they just kind of continue down that path.
Yeah, that's why I really encourage people to be independent thinkers and to do your own research, because whether you're founding a company and you're taking the knowledge off the shelf from Silicon Valley about what they, quote, want you to do, or whether you're taking the diet information from the TV, I just encourage you to read for yourself, because you will see that a lot of these these things have like their incentives. They have their reasoning for why they want you to consume a certain thing or think a certain way. And it ultimately lines somebody's pockets.
Yeah, I guess you can apply that to really anything. I mean, you want to try to get the most information you can, maybe learn from somebody that's done it, learn from somebody that has done it if you're trying to achieve that same goal, right? And so if it's like, if I'm like, you've already done it, I'm going to go to you and say, hey, give me all the information. Like, what do I need to do? What do I not need to do? Instead of listening to, I hate to say it, but like some 400-pound person, I'm not going to go ask them like, hey, how do I get healthier? How do I lose weight? Right. And it's the same thing in business. It's like, I'm not going to go ask some guy that's never started a business, like, hey man, show me what you know, or what do you think about this? Because he's going to give you bad information. He's just going to give you an opinion that he hasn't, it's like no experience, no anything. Oh, there's no way. That seems really hard. And so you have to ask the people that have already done what you're trying to do. Like that's really in life and anything, right? Like in health or business or anything. I even think I posted about that randomly this morning. It's like, go ask that person that has either done it, and has the results that you want to get. It's like, go get the information from them.
Yeah, I think that's why coaching and information products have become so prominent these days, because people want it from the source. They don't want something that was filtered through a curriculum at a university and has all these political agendas behind it and then given to you. You're getting 10% of the truth, Yeah,
I know. I agree with that. And that's why I like this. I like the coaching space. And again, with, something that's that big, you're going to have 10% of, bad in anything, right? The internet and just everything in general. So you are going to have 10%. So you have to really research. Goes back to like, hey, if I'm going to pay for coaching, like make sure that person like has really done that. And that for 100%. Yeah. Then it's okay, because they're going to give you a lot of good information of like, hey, these are all the mistakes I made. Don't do this. And probably increase your chances of success for sure. So when you are seeking out coaching, which I still think is an amazing thing online, like you can shorten your learning curve for almost anything now. It's like, okay, I want to, like we had a guy in here last week, home services, like I want to start Christmas lights. I want to do this. Gives you step by step. Do this. This is how you bid. This is how you do this. And it's like, guy could walk into it with almost no money and just go start it that next week with the right information. And so just make sure that the person that you're going to buy something from, mentorship, coaching, has actually really done it, and you really research them. And then I think it's okay. I mean, I think you can make a safe bet.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to assess it.
It is, because social media has a lot of like, you're showing this and, you think they're successful. But I think when you really listen to somebody for a long time and, you get some social proof, and then you get some other proof from like referrals or people actually went through the program. And it's like, but real ones, instead of just like, fake deals on the screen. It's like, hey, reach out to those people. It's like, hey, you went through this program, like, reach out to that person. It's like, hey, I saw your testimonials. That like, what'd you actually learn, or what, was it worth it? And so just reach out to people and try to research, I think.
Yeah, I went to sign up for a program, fairly expensive one's $50,000, and I posted about it on my social media, and like 3 people responded. They're like, it's a scam, don't do it. And what's funny is that
and they just gave you they gave you the reasons. They had went through.
Yeah, so I asked, and it was people who had been through the program. But I probably interviewed like 10 coaches before I decided on one to hire, and I still felt uneasy about the decision. So I don't think you're ever gonna like make that decision 100% right, but I think like each one teaches you something.
That's the other thing, is you're not gonna. It's not like a once one-time purchase and then you're done forever. Like you're done, I know everything from this one purchase, and you can't look at it that way, I think, because you are going to learn something almost from every different person.
Yeah.
But as long as that person that you did buy, benefited you either in a monetary way or
intellectually.
Yeah, intellectually, then, it was probably worth doing, right? And like you said earlier, it's like the success formula where you're investing in yourself over time. And then eventually you have this compounded version of yourself that like knows everything and knows a lot about life and a lot of life experience and wisdom and mistakes and like
mistakes that you paid for.
Yeah. I actually like starting something. When I have an idea, I try to execute on it. If I really believe in it, I mean, all in, like the next day. Like I'm like, oh, let's go. How do we do it? Because I learned, like I'll make mistakes, but I do them really fast. And then I'm like, okay, don't do this. Okay, I do this. And so if somebody else has been thinking about it for 6 months, like I'm already so far ahead.
6 months ahead of them, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm going as fast as I can. It's like, oh, this didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, I shouldn't have spent money on that. Oh man, I really messed up on this one. And then you're in a place where like you're super confident. You've done it 1,000 times. And then you actually get better and you like doing it, and you're going to be more successful at it because you've done it 1,000 times. I don't know. That's I've kind of always been that way. I learn by doing. I mean, I do want the information. If I can shorten my learning curve for somebody, that'd be great. Just like, don't do this. Like you're going to fail. This is a big one. If I just have a couple of those things, then yeah, I'll just go and run with it after that.
Yeah. I think there's a place for all of it. Like the course is do it yourself. The coaching is done with you. And then there's of course services it's done for you. Right. I think a mix of them is good. Let me put it this way. The most successful guys that I know perpetually had some kind of coach, mentor, some third party keeping an eye on them throughout their career. If I could have changed one thing in my career, I probably would have had more consistent third party input, because it's often tough to see your own blind spots unless you're intentional about taking time to reflect and be like, hey, which mistakes did I make? And that particular reflection it's a tough one, to like face it and own it and be like, damn, I really fucked that up. And what did I learn from that? And that's not my natural process. Let me put it that way. Normally I want to move to the next thing and keep executing, but I realized that our memory only goes back so far,
Yeah. Thinking back in my 20s, that would have been a huge thing for me if I would have just reached out. I mean, again, this is, talking like pre-social media. So you're Googling stuff and there's not the same information that you can get today for sure. Or access to a coach or the right mentor that could help you. And so, I'm from a small town. And so the people that are around you, like no one I knew I could go to and say, hey, we're doing 15 million a year, but I'm like, I'm stuck here because of this. And like, I didn't have anybody to reach out to. Like there wasn't a lot of information back then. So I do think if I would have had somebody like through each one of these stages, just like, hey, do this. And, some of it software stuff, early on e-com stuff. And I'm like, man, if I would have just had the right person that would have told me what to do and not to do. And where to invest money and maybe not invest money, that has done it and maybe made those mistakes, I would have been there way faster.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you think, because I mean, you've obviously had a lot of success yourself, and you just had the amazing grit and just pushed through it all. I was curious if you thought it would have magnified your success.
I think it would have made a difference. I think ultimately I would have ended up in the same place, but if I could shave 10 years off that would have been really awesome. I do think it cost me a bunch of years of not having the right people around me. And it's not because I didn't want them around me. I just didn't know who to talk to. And I didn't have, a network of people or a circle of people. I couldn't just go ask somebody, hey, this guy's doing 30 million, this guy's doing 50 million. Like I didn't know anyone that was doing those numbers, or I just didn't have access to anybody. And so, yeah, if I would have, like, I could have shortened my learning curve big time and it just, have been, I think, successful faster, and maybe not made as many mistakes, and maybe been able to grow it more, or whatever stage of my life.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, business is cycles, right? There's like a growth cycle, and then come around in a learning cycle, and the growth cycle gets bigger and the learning cycle gets bigger. So if you can accelerate the, that learning process, that cycle, ultimately, if it's compounding, you will become more successful. But I think it's speaking in practicalities here, it's very hard to hire employees effectively, and it's very hard to hire coaches and mentors effectively. And one of the things of somebody that I really look up to, what he does is he just has them screen share on the spot. So like, if I'm interviewing a media buyer, I'm like, hey, open up your ad account and show me some live campaigns that you have running. And I did that to somebody this past week, and he's like, it was weird. He got all reactive, and then he was like, maybe this isn't a right fit. I think I'm going to bow out. And just by me asking him to show some live campaigns, right? Another dude that I interviewed did the same thing, felt very comfortable, and showed me real live data, real time.
That's a good tip.
So,
like, you kind of overlook that, right? Because somebody's just selling you.
Exactly.
Like really, I mean, there's a lot of people that can do what they say, but it's all a sales pitch. Like everybody that's on the phone, whether you're interviewing somebody or for a contractor or for your employee or anybody, it's a sales pitch.
Yeah, if you're interviewing a coach, and in my case, it's about like my business model and our sales process and optimizing those. So I would ask him, hey, can you show me another agency where you optimize the sales process? Where was it at the beginning? Where was it when it was finished? And I think that would root a lot out, and it kind of forces them on the spot in a respectful way. I mean, obviously, if they've been BSing you this whole time, they're going to get called out. But that was something that I learned from he's an advisor to one of our companies. He did that. He's younger than me though, and he every time we interviewed candidates together, he would ask them like, hey, can you show me something live right now, or can you show me what you're working on? You see idiosyncrasies, right? Like if you see that like it's dated from 2019, maybe it's not relevant. Or if you see that like, the logo's missing or something like that, then it's like, and we're smart enough to spot those things now. So
that's a good idea. I'll use that.
It's really hard to hire.
Yeah, it really is. Especially me being, pretty new to the social media space. So, I think that's a good tip because, we've been on the phone with a bunch of people. And luckily I think I found the right people through referral, which is, it's seemed to work out so far. But we have been on the phone with some people, but if I would have used that tip, I think it would have probably weeded them out a lot quicker than where it went.
It can help you standardize your process. Like I like referrals, but I'll challenge you on that, because referrals, you're taking kind of whatever the cat brings in, you're trusting somebody else's word. I would still probably ask them to show me some
You're right.
some live materials or product. But if you can measure everybody by the same benchmark, it makes it easier to say like they're either above the line or below the line. So that's why I like to do that these days with whatever criteria that I'm evaluating them by, and coaches too, because coaches, they're not expecting to get grilled like that. They're like, wait, I'm the one asking questions here, So kind of put you back on the power spot, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good tip, pretty much for anything, right?
Yeah, and you think about most professions and whatever, like a coach can show you something live. He can show you other students and their progress, not just a screenshot that's on his landing page, but like an actual live campaign or an actual live process that they have going on.
When I was sitting with this, this guy that started the home services business a couple weeks ago, he's like, Shawn, he's like, I can show someone He goes, I know if they don't make 100,000 their first year, they're just not doing the work. And he goes, I can literally right now.
He has a coaching program or something around it, or
he does. He just shows people how to start home services. I mean, start to finish, gives them the software, gives them everything. I mean, I actually really like the idea because, you know, you have a lot of people that reach out to you and they're like, hey, my son doesn't know what to do. He's 18. Like, it is a really good idea because you can start with almost no money and you just need hustle. And so I really liked it. But what he said is he was like, we can leave right now before we go to the airport. He goes, I guarantee you can come with me and I will make $800 just walking down the street and knocking on the doors, you know, for whatever, window cleaning or gutters or whatever. And we can walk with $800 or $1,000 by the time we get to the airport. He goes, I can leave with no money and literally do that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I watched some clips from that episode and I'm like, damn, these kids are like 20 years old.
I really I was impressed by both of them. And both of them, one of them was only Christmas lights. But he started, he was 17 and like the way he talked, like it was efficient. He was like, you know, I don't go to the house anymore. I will look it up on Google. There's this measuring program. I measure the length of the deal. I get him a quote.
Oh my God.
He goes, I get him a quote in 10 minutes. And this is a 19-year-old kid that he learned when he was 17, 18. He goes, I get him a quote in less than 10 minutes. So they're already ready to do it.
Incredible.
And nobody else does. So he goes, I close like 80% of the deals and I don't even go to the house because you're getting them like, they're like, hey, I'm interested in Christmas lights. And like, he goes, oh, no problem. What's your address? While they're on the phone. And he goes, give me 10 minutes. I'll be right back to you. And he sends them the quote.
No
and he said,
way.
they're already like, they're ready to buy. And they're like, oh, $1,800. Okay, no problem. He sends them the quote on QuickBooks. They pay for it. And he's already got the job. And so he goes, and he runs a Facebook lead. And so it's like they're ready to buy, and he's so much faster than everybody. He just gets right back to him and closes the deal. He's 19 years old. He'll do 620,000 this year. Only Christmas lights. At like a 74% margin. So I mean, still crazy money. So it was cool to listen to both of them. Like, and then the other guy was more home services in general, but Christmas lights was just a portion of what he teaches people and what he does still. He does a couple $1 million a year at a super high margin with his company that he's had for 9 years. And so it's cool. There's so many different ways to make money. And what I liked about that one is I do have a lot of people that ask me like about their kids, like, what should my son do? What, you know, he's 16 years old and he wants to work. And it's like, after hearing those two stories, and you don't really need barely any money to get started, it's just hustle. I was like, man, that's a really good business for some kid to go and start.
He learns social skills. He learns how to close. He learns how
Sales,
to approach people. Like, there's so many valuable skills there, more valuable than college, in my opinion. But what I find funny is that is boiled down to a process where, you, like you said, like he could teach it to you, you know, on the way to the airport, and you could go do it for yourself. There's also this glamorization of like digital companies. You know, like you feel like you're going to make way more margin by being online, but it actually happens to be way more competitive in home services. And
so that's
B&M
what he said. Yeah, he goes, look, there's so many cities across the United States, and most people are looking for, like, he said, that's why I think most people get deterred, is like, it's not glamorous. It's like, you tell your friends, it's like, oh, I'm starting a window cleaning company. They're like, whatever. But he's like, my company makes millions a year.
Probably
and he's
more
like,
than theirs.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, he said, that's why I know if my students don't do $100,000 the first year, he's like, I know 100% they're not doing any work. Like, I know for sure. He's like, we have too many successful people. And he said, it's such a step by step. If you do this, you will get this. And he goes, so if they don't produce at least $100,000 in revenue, he's like, they're not applying themselves to it at all.
Yeah, I think for anybody listening who's considering like a business to go into, like, I hear your story, Shawn, you're in oil and gas sifting sand.
Well, yeah, we have
not exactly the most glamorous business, but ultimately strong and profitable.
Yeah.
Extremely resilient business. You can just, coming from somebody who's worked in a lot of glamorous businesses like TikTok, marketing, sales, like all the stuff that is like shiny, it's a slog, right? Like, it's a very competitive, high, the life cycle is very fast, high turnover. It's just crazy competitive. And then you got my brother who started a local plumbing company in Atlanta, and he's on track for $1 million his first year.
I like those businesses because, you know, internet or AI can't really mess them up. Again, not glamorous, right? Hey, I'm a plumber, but once you get reoccurring contracts with plumbing, and HVAC is a big one now. And, you know, once you get people on the service contract, it's like, hey, we'll come once a year, we'll do this. It's like you have reoccurring revenue. and then you can actually have a business that you can go sell. So those are all really cool businesses. And I think where I made my mistake, whenever everything worked out okay, but one big mistake I made when I had my e-com was I was always looking at the top line. I'm like, I have to hit 10 million, I have to hit 20 million, but my margin was going down. And
what kind of business was it?
It was e-com. I was just retail. We were selling vitamins and supplements and stuff. But like in my mind, I'm a kid and I'm like looking at the glamour part. It's like, I got to do 50 million, I got to do 30 million, but I wasn't focusing on the margin. And so then when you don't have the margin, you actually can't scale even faster, because if there's no margin, you can't buy more ads, and you can't, it's so tough. And if I would have just stopped like the growth thing and just like really focused on only customer service and only margin and trying to get products in that, made a bigger margin. And even though if I would have, my ego would have took a hit, my revenue probably would have went down, my margin and my net revenue probably would have went way up if I would have but I was so focused every year on like, it's like, it has to go 20 million, 30 million. Yeah. Thinking you're going to have some huge like exit. And so like in my mind that, I fell into what some of your app builders do. It's like, okay, if I do this money, I'm going to sell it for some crazy amount one day because I'm the biggest or whatever. And it goes back to like, hey, just have a business that makes money. And number one, you will find a buyer if you're trying to sell one day. If it's a business makes money for 10 years, you can sell it to anybody, I promise. And then number two, you'd be able to scale a lot faster because you have a margin to go hire good people. That was the other thing. I had a low margin. I couldn't go hire the best of the best, right? And so I know for now, when I invest in businesses, I will not invest in another business that has, a low margin or something not to work with. I'd rather be the premium brand, have a little bit less business, and like everybody we don't offer discounts in whatever business I'm doing, and instead of like just trying to like have this huge volume and then have some low margin they're trying to hit. Yeah, because you don't get good people either. And so I can't do everything anymore. I don't want to be a CEO. So to get good people, I need to be able to pay them a lot. I need to be able to give them a career. Or even a share in equity. And so we need a really good margin to do that.
Yeah, I think there's so many misconceptions as people ascend in their career. Like for me, a long time I glamorized high volume because it's very defensible revenue. After coming off of an agency that, we had contracts that were $100K a month, $130K a month. And so if you lose one of those, it's crushing for the business. But on the other side of it, you're serving high volume, let's just say e-commerce supplements, you're working on razor thin margins. Yep. And so you have a different set of problems. So I encourage people not to glamorize any other business model too much, and instead just focus on like, ultimately, if the goal is to make money, and usually with your first few businesses, the goal is solely to make money.
100%.
What is the fastest way to making money? If I had stayed in the construction business that my mentor had offered me when I was like 21 years old, I probably would have made a lot of money in a very short time. He had established customer base, had all his tools, whatever. But it wasn't glamorous. I wanted to go be in tech. I wanted to go be in marketing. And so I had to really bite my ego and do the dirt. It was a lot more dirt than if I had just took what was right in front of me at the time.
Yeah, I think especially as a young man, when you're graduating high school, you want to go and like prove to all these people that you're gonna do something with your life, right? And then you go tell somebody that you're like, oh, I'm just doing construction, even though you might be making more money than every single person it just in your mind you like would probably second guess that opportunity.
Now looking back, I would not.
Oh, I know. I wouldn't either. Funny. And so if you go back and you tell any young people are listening to this or they're thinking about what business to start, like, do something that and is going to make money. Don't just go for like, some glamorous job or something that you think your friends are going to, think you're doing good. You really want to make margin. You really want to make money. That's the ultimate goal, especially when you're young, because then that will allow you to go, do a bigger business, go do something different, or, continue or grow that business.
Yeah, you can make bigger plays, like if you capture some margin in your 20s, you can go into a bigger, more competitive business, but like at least you got some capital to get into the game with.
It is. And that's where, I think most people get stuck, right? They probably go to college, and then when they get out of college, the ROI isn't there from college. So they, they have a car note and then they get their apartment. But then their job, after their student loans and their job and their car note and their apartment, they don't have any money. So there's no cash. So then they can't go like do something bigger or try to make the decision. Yeah. They're almost like stuck. And then you're hoping that your job's going to give you a raise, or, most people. And so that's why I'm kind of a little bit anti-college now, or anti, I guess, traditional education. Just with number one, the amount of information that's out there. Like you can just go and take a $5,000 deal like this kid's, and it's like you make a couple $100,000 your first year, and like you didn't waste 4 years of your life.
Yeah,
number
it's
one,
4 years down to like 4 weeks
yeah, and then
to get a professional skill that you can apply.
crazy.
Coming from somebody who spent $100,000 on school, because I did my master's, did a dual master's, I thought more credentials,
What was
more
the
success.
what was the degrees in?
One was in integrated marketing communication. One was an MBA, Master's of Business Management, and then I had my undergrad in design. And by all measures, that seems like a great trifecta, right? But in practicality, I didn't really use much of it. The most value I got was from the marketing strategy stuff, so kind of like the brickwork of marketing. But ultimately, it took me 6 years to do all of that.
You would have figured that out.
Imagine what I could have done if I had been in the construction business for 6 years.
Yeah. Or just, started in marketing right off the bat. You would have learned you would have learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think with business, there's all these other, I guess, squirrels that you could be chasing. And I encourage people not to, especially being someone who's got ADD, right? But you just got to, once you pick something, make sure that it's working and then just stick with it. Because, your career is a perfect example of that, right? Like you got into the oil and gas business and just stuck with it for a decade now? More?
Pretty close, 2017, so not quite a decade, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, still, I guess, relatively new, but...
Yeah. And with this business, though, there's bad down cycles, and it's really volatile. COVID being one of them for sure. Goes down to zero. They couldn't frack any wells.
Wow.
It was zero.
But you stuck with the business.
Yeah, we had 300 employees at that time, and we had zero revenue.
What did you do during that time?
So, luckily, we had no debt, which if you definitely have a volatile business like that, you need to keep it as low as you can. And we were able to, we had our best first quarter. So in March when they started, so January, February, March, started shutting the country down late March, early April-ish. So luckily we had our best quarter ever. And that kind of carried us in no debt. So and most of our equipment was owned. There was some lease that we were able to just bring back in and park. But we had all these people, and that carried us through.
What did they do?
We were paying people to keep, because how am I going to lose all these good people?
Yeah.
And then what if it comes back fast when it does? It's the scary part of this one is it was kind of like a once in a lifetime thing where it's like, well, I don't know how long it's going to be. And we couldn't do that for a really long time. It's like, is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 6 months? We had no idea. It's like, well, country's still shut down. And we're like,
yeah. And they kept saying, 2 weeks,
2 weeks,
2 months,
2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And it's like, and then our customers, they couldn't frack anything because there was nowhere for the oil to go. All the pipelines were full. Everything was backed up. Nothing was open.
Wow. Because
there's no gas, no anything. And so it's just like zero revenue. And you don't know. That was the hardest time, because you just there's no predictability. It's like, okay, well, the government's making us shut down. If it just stays shut down for 6 months, then we're really fucked. Luckily, a couple of our customers started coming back a little bit early, as things started opening back up, and a couple of our core customers, and we were able to inch out of that thing just slowly, and it ended up working out. And the next year was okay, but that was probably one of the only times where I don't know what's going to happen. Because usually you can try to go fix something. It's like, okay, we're spending too much. We lost revenue. But when it's zero and you don't really know when you're going to have...
Did you pull out the PPP?
We did. We had a little bit. Yeah, we had a little bit.
Good bridge.
Yeah, it was. And we burned through that, and then my partner put in millions on top of the PPP. So it was like a help. It helped us not lose as much, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But we really had to keep it going. It didn't last long. For how many people we had, for how much equipment we had to move back. Just to move back equipment is $1 million, or it's not cheap when you're moving stuff from all over the country to bring it back, so it doesn't get stolen or just sit somewhere.
Sheesh. Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that thinking about this again in practical terms. I know you would like to make things actionable. It's like, don't take anything too seriously, because you're gonna get rough and tumbled in business, and it's gonna get uglier than you think it could possibly get. But the quote goes, people overestimate what they can achieve in 6 months and underestimate what they can achieve in 6 years. And so it just kind of like puts you in this long-term mindset that like there may be a 1-2 year dip in your business, and like you just have to accept that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have some ugliness that is going to be unpredictable. Like you don't know when it's going to end. Like we didn't know when COVID was going to end. You didn't know when you were going to get out of that rut. And I've seen the same thing. When the tech market crashed in 2021, we lost 2 clients who were paying us over 6 figures per month. And it's like, I don't know when we're going to close the client again like that, you know? And so it just really toughens you up, you know, and I think it makes good character. I think entrepreneurs are probably the most calm and confident and collected people that I know because of that. You know,
you've pretty much been through everything. I'm sure everybody everybody that is successful, they've probably almost been out of business or been bankrupt and came back from it, which I know a couple of people that have been bankrupt and lost a lot and then went straight back and
came back strong.
10 years later. It's like, and this is not when they're young. This is later in life where they're like, you know,
got families,
financial crisis. Yeah. Kids.
Crazy.
And like, yeah. And so I do think that that's true. An entrepreneur, you've almost been through everything bad that can possibly happen, or you know you have to worry about all the employees you have. So now it's not you and just your family; it's like you have 100 families, and so it's like, okay, I have to make sure that we don't make bad decisions, so I don't ruin all these other people's lives either.
Yeah,
and they're counting on us to like, okay, make the right decision, and you know stay in business and help them grow in their careers, and so. Kind of makes me, I think about that a lot as we're like, okay, well, I need to take care of all these people, you know, I have to make it work. And so that's how you base your decisions on a lot of things, especially when you have a bunch of employees.
Yeah. It's a reality. You realize it's not just about you.
Yeah.
Even though you're the ultimate equity holder and you're going to make the most money out of anybody, you carry the heaviest load, and everything is your fault too. Like if you lay in bed at night and think, why is everything so fucked up? You can pretty much trace it all back to you as a founder.
Yes.
So that's hard to come to terms with. But there's this show is called The School of Hard Knocks on Instagram. It's like a street interview show, like 20-year-old dude. You probably watched it. And he goes up to these rich white guys in Beverly Hills. He's like, you ever been broke before?
Yeah. And
they're all like, yes.
They were, I feel like they were a lot more real for a long time. I was watching them and some of them seem a little staged.
Yeah, now I'm like, it's a little sketch, but.
Well, and I think he's gotten so popular. It's like, oh, well, they kind of know when he pulls up. It's like, oh, so it's probably harder to get candid answers out of people. He actually came up when I was with Wes.
Oh, to you?
Well, no. I was with Wes in Miami, and of course he sees Wes's car, and me and him were going to lunch, and he comes up and he's like, hey, what? And of course he knows him, but yeah, he was in that little Miami square. I don't know where we were at, and there was another guy he was interviewing, and then he ran across and he interviewed. It was kind of funny. But yeah, it's crazy to see how he blew up just interviewing people for like success. And really it's about tips. Like you're trying to get a tip from a guy. It's like, hey, I went bankrupt. I did this. And it's like, holy shit, that happened to him. And he's a billionaire. You know, it happens to everybody.
It's pretty wild to think about, because there was a big real estate guy in New York who killed himself because he got himself into $400 million in debt, and he was still living large. And you realize that guy is probably just inches away from having a major blowout success too. Yeah. And again, that's why I encourage people, like if you're on the journey to be a monk, you know, just to like, this too shall pass, because you're not going to control it. Even though everything's your fault, you can't control everything. That's the paradox of being an entrepreneur.
Yep. And well, you do your best to navigate through it, right? When something happens,
exactly.
You're like, okay,
you're navigating through it, but you're not changing the factors.
No. It's all unpredictable, because when you're in business, so many things can change, like politically, country gets shut down. It's like there's no prediction of what's going to happen. You lose your best customer.
Yeah.
In our industry right now, a lot of mergers, So there's like the industry, like
the oil and gas.
Yeah, every like 2 to 3 months, smaller, which is probably the right thing, because long term, as you need less gasoline, you know, I think everybody's kind of preparing for the next like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so you have like the big Exxons, Chevrons, like everyone has bought all of these small producers. So they own everything. So it's like my customer base goes way down. Like,
yeah. So what does that mean for your business?
We've worked for, you know, some of the, you know, big 5, big 6 for a long time, and, you know, we're capable, we have the equipment to do the work. But, you know, a lot of people run out of business because, let's say you have a small operator and they, you know, had all these contractors that were working with them for 2 years. Exxon buys them, that just goes away. And so they make it more efficient. They don't just do the same amount of work. They just own all the producing assets, producing wells. And then they become so efficient now.
They consolidate, yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, we can just turn, we're going to frack our certain schedule. We control this market for the next whatever. And all those people that were working just go away. And then you have a smaller work that's out there to go get. And so it's tough. So we have again, it's really unpredictable because you could be on the good side or the bad side of a merger, which we've been on both. You lose all your work that you had, expected for the next year or two, or you gained it because they merged and then, your competitor went out of business, or, maybe you picked up a little bit. So we've been on both sides. It's really tough to predict, but it's like never predict anything that's going to ever happen. That's for sure. And when you're an entrepreneur, but I think that's what makes you strong, right? Like bad stuff happens and you're like, when it happens again, you're like, it's not that bad.
You realize that fulfillment doesn't come from the money that you make. It becomes from who you become.
Yeah.
You realize, damn, I made it through that. Like I out-survived all this shit. Like it's so funny because especially when you live out loud, like if you post about your winnings and stuff, you get a lot of trolls, right? And I post about my stuff a little bit, not a lot, but I get trolls. And when they hate on me, I'm just like, dude, if you could have only seen the ugliness I had to see to get to where I am, like you would never have done it. You would never have wanted to do it. My brother in particular, I got a brother who's a hater, and I'm like, dude, you can't even begin to fathom what I have gone through. You think you've gone through so much hard times, and I'm like, dude, I've gone through way worse. But I would never say that to him because he won't understand it. I just think I'm condescending. But I think when you get that level of conviction and ownership, and from working and spending a lot of time with Dan Bilzerian, and this is something I learned from him. Again, it's always interesting to put yourself around different quote mentors or just intellectual forces. But this guy has got so much conviction. I've never met somebody with more conviction than him. Like he's just so firm in his belief system and what he thinks, and he's basically unpersuadable on anything, dude. Like don't try to argue that guy on shit. But like you get that level of conviction and you get that level of confidence through doing it, right? Through being an action taker and doing the dirt, and it just makes you such a firm personality. And that to me, that's like what I love most about it. I love the outcome that you just are a very comprehensive, complete, self-actualized person. And so you ultimately win intellectually or spiritually because you've become, rather than like, making money and all that.
I see my wife like now going through a lot of stuff I went through. And she's freaking out, and I'm like, look, don't, it's not that bad. But she's still,
you ain't seen shit yet. Like,
yeah,
it's going to get worse.
Well, no, and that,
you don't want to say that.
Because of, how we started our businesses and like the path, I went through that stuff 10 years ago, or something very similar. But she, she's a really, she seems, well, she really is. She's really tough. She's really good at communication. But every once in a while she's like, has a melt. Like it becomes like so much stress because she's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I can deal with this. I was like, it'll be all right. And she always gets through it. But it's like, I'm seeing because I already went through all that stuff.
I mean, I feel bad for female entrepreneurs just because it's not their nature. They're not really meant to be the rock. They're meant to be more like the ocean. And but I see this setup that she's got. We're at her office. I just took a tour of her incredible facility. It's all beautifully designed, and she's got all these employees. It's bustling. It's energetic, and it really makes me proud to see a woman achieve something like that. And but you still never, as the entrepreneur I'm sure a lot of young women look up to her as extremely successful.
Yes.
And I do too. I think she's very successful. But she still fights those battles. She's still dealing with supplier issues. Maybe she needs to buy product for the next month that is going to take up all of her liquidity because her demand's increasing and she needs to sell more product next month, but that takes more investment from this month, right? And we just don't see that. People don't really talk about it, but it's pretty cool to see her do that because those are real battles.
She's so different than me because she's like an extremely good operator. Like as far as like,
that's an anomaly.
Every detail, every process, she's like, that's her skill. And then when I'm like, hey, you need to go blow this up, we need to do this, and like her mind doesn't think like that. It's like a visionary or like what's going to happen 10 years from now. She's like, she fixes like every single process, and like her attention to detail is like insane. So she gets a little upset with me sometimes because I'm like, go.
She thinks you move fast, right?
Yeah, because we started working together for the first time ever in our whole careers on the podcast, and I'm like, just like, go as fast as I can. We'll figure it out. And she's like, whoa, you're not doing this. You're not crossing your I's, dotting your T's, and like, you're not, you're doing this poorly because you're doing this. And it's like, it's fine. Like, that's why I hire operators now, because I am not probably the greatest at like, once it gets going, like I can't like the detail day to day, like just everything that's involved in a business is really fucking hard. And she's really good at it. I mean, you come in here and her operation is like so well-oiled machine, and that's probably why it's been profitable.
Very dialed in.
Yeah, that's probably why it stays as profitable as it does, is because of her. If she would have just hired somebody to do it, early on, I don't think it would probably be where it is today.
Yeah, I don't think it would get to this level of profitability. It really does take a bit of a psycho behavior.
She's a psycho behavior person, and when she comes in here, and I'm sure, and that's hard on employees sometimes, which it's fine, but the employee looks at it like, man, she's always on me. She's always down on me. She just has high expectations. And everyone does. Like, I mean, you think Elon Musk is going to go change the world by not having high expectations, like beyond high expectations? You can't do that. Yeah. And so she's one of those people, like she demands, excellence pretty much from everybody, but she shows them how to get there. That's the thing. It's like, she doesn't just go, you don't know what you're doing. Like she has processes, and she helps people, and she shows them how to, ultimately like get the most out of, their life at the company, and, be successful in whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you brought that up, because my wife and I have a similar dynamic in the sense that I'm like, hey, just let it happen. If it breaks, we'll fix it.
That's kind of how I am too.
And then she's like, no, we're going to get this all perfect before we go live.
Yes.
And there's just two ways, two management styles. And, personally, I think this level, the side that, you and I are on, comes with, you can reduce your average stress level a lot by not worrying too much. If we were to worry about all the variables within our businesses every day, it would just be pure anxiety all the time. So, and I think the perfectionist does experience a lot of that, sadly. But then at the end of the day, you come into the office, it's beautiful, it's stunning, like everything is dialed in and perfect. And you can kind of, as a leader, you get to kind of choose your route. I'm either going to be the type who's like, fix it if it's broken, move fast and break things, or we're going to make this perfect and launch. And I think Steve Jobs, a lot of the creative types, like he's notorious for dropping an iPhone into a fish tank, and it didn't sink fast enough. He's like, we need to pack this in tighter.
And everybody thinks he's crazy. It's
yeah,
like, dude, he's too demanding. He's too demanding. He's trying to, but you're trying to like push someone beyond what they do, and that's the only way you can create a company like that. I like that big and have that much change. And Elon's probably the guy I look up to the most, just because, again, a lot of people don't know. But to be able to have an idea that big and then also execute on almost everything. I mean, I actually think Exo is going to come out at the end. It'll be really good investment for him.
Twitter?
It already has, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think it already has, because he has such a big personal brand, and it had such a huge impact on the country, because nobody could silence anybody. And before, it was like, I mean, he released all this stuff. It's like, hey, look, they were making them do that. Like, here's the files. So anyways, I look up to him just because it got so hard to execute, and he just does it time and time again. But that's with like large scale companies. So to get like that, you have to hold everybody like at this super high level of expectation.
Yeah. And employees on the surface, they're not going to like it, but when they reflect on it, they're going to be like, who was the best boss you ever had?
Yeah.
The one that you grew the most with. Right. So ultimately, like, employees are going to look up to your wife for decades to come, because she pulled the best out of them, right?
Yeah, they might not be happy in the moment sometimes. Like, she's always on me, she's hard driving. But then when they go to another company, which is actually, she's gotten feedback from people before, and they're like,
they want to come back.
Well, they go, I had no idea why you were telling me to do all this stuff. She goes, they're like, it's chaos over here. I don't even know how they're in business. Like, and they go, I didn't understand like why you were on me and why you were telling me this certain process and this and this and this and this. She's like, I just thought you were always on me. But then when I went somewhere else, I'm like, oh, like, no wonder this business is shit and it's not running well and there's no good management and like everybody's just, doing their own thing and it's like just chaos and the business doesn't run well. And though they don't realize it until they leave, and she still stays in contact and has good relationships with everybody. But I have heard that from her a lot, and they reach out to her and tell her.
Yeah, I think like we definitely appreciate our most salient experiences. The things that we remember the most sharply and that have the biggest impact on us are typically not positive experiences, right? It's typically something where you had a very difficult lesson that it was that you learned, or when you broke out of a hard time, or when you were at rock bottom, you have these breakthroughs. And I think that's the funny part about life and being an entrepreneur is that like the glamour, making money and stuff, like once you start making a certain amount of money, like it doesn't really feel that much different. Like the relative amount, like at some point you can just buy the things that you want, right? But you feel pain real sharply, when you're in hard times, and the worse the pain gets, the more big action that you want to take. And so again, I remind people that the negative experiences are actually the ones that shape you and like that you're being most proud of.
That, and if somebody is one of those friends or mentors or bosses or managers, and they do pull you out of your comfort zone, like you just sit back and think, it's like,
say thanks.
Yeah. Say thanks, because they're not letting you be complacent and they're like getting that in that habit of just doing the same thing day in and day out. It's like they're always like pulling you out of that comfort zone. And so you probably do have some resentment for them a little bit, right? In the moment. But then if they leave or they get another manager and they're like, oh, like how beneficial was that? Like, I understand now. And it sucks, but it takes somebody to, I think, go through that and then get a bad one or a bad mentor or a bad, friend or whatever. And, go like, oh, I understand what they're doing every day. And I understand the value of it.
Yeah. Being in client services, we serve app founders and tech companies, right? And if the client is being very demanding, oftentimes the first intuition of the team is to complain that they're demanding too much. But I'm like, well, it's actually just an opportunity for greatness if you like turn it on its other side and like look at it from a different vantage point. They're ultimately going to make you better because they're challenging you more. And so for me, I've been more patient because I'm like, well, I want the opportunity to grow. And employees will be like, oh, they're being abusive or they're pulling too much or taking too much. I'm like, even if they are, if I'm going to become better for it, I'd rather have that experience than the little bit of markup and costs that we had to comp or whatever it was. But when you look at it like it's not a loss, it's a lesson, right? Like it's either a win or a lesson, right? Like I love that analogy. I forget who said it, but
I know the quote you're talking about, and I think Steve Jobs has one. I just don't know it exact, but it really is. I think there is one quote that says, and I don't know if it's Steve Jobs, but they say some years you win, and then some years you build character.
Yeah.
I don't know who said. I think it's Steve Jobs. I don't know which one it was.
Some years. Think about that. Years.
Yeah, some years, and that's what happens. That's been my experience over the last 25 years. It's like, good year, like terrible, and then but when I think back, it's like, okay.
Over 25 years, how many learning years did you have? Did you estimate how many series of learning? Like so,
I would say I had a lot, but not in a row. Like I
every 5 years or so.
Yeah, like I feel like there's a lot of singles. So like, yeah, every like 3 years and I have one, then like, 4 years goes by and then single, and then, so they're all just random, but I feel like there's a lot of singles in there, but not past a year. I think
Past a year.
Again, it's like what you said is as time goes by, you're gonna get through it. Right. And so you don't feel that way when you're going through it. But when I look back over 25 years, I definitely have a lot of singles of, I guess you want to say by the quote, building character, but losing at the time. But again, yeah, you look back on all of them, it's like all those mistakes, like I learned a lot of stuff through all that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can attribute a lot of the breakthroughs to those breakdowns, right? But for myself, I was asking you because I'm curious. I think my career is about 15 years at this point, and I would say there was 2 or 3 like rough spots, where I was like, when is this going to end kind of thing. And the max they lasted was about 2 years for me. So it seems like mine were a little bit longer than yours. but it always seems to happen, you know. For me, the spread was about 5 years apart. I would have 5 years of really good success, and then I would get humbled and slapped, you know. And then the next time around, before, like, you're in the character building phase, and you're putting in the grind. You're like, when's this gonna end? When's this gonna end? And then you finally you look up for air, and it's like, oh my God, I'm fucking crushing it right now. And that's a pretty magical feeling. I think that's like something everybody can look forward to as an entrepreneur.
Dude, it's so awesome. Like when you just like, sometimes you'll sit back and think about it, it's like, man, I can't believe like, you know, what happened. Because yeah, there's times where you're just like, God, so bad. But I think since if you didn't have those, like all the good stuff wouldn't be that good. It wouldn't be like this amazing feeling.
Exactly.
Because you're like, I know I don't like that feeling. And this is so amazing that this is happening now.
Yeah, for me, it was 2021. So 2021 to 2023 were very hard for me because the tech industry, like SVB, like these big banks, like we were all funded by venture capital downstream two steps. And so I was putting in the dirt for these 2 years. Like, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? And my wife is like, this entrepreneurship thing, like, what is this? Like, you're not making money essentially, right? Like I was using my investments and my savings to cover the cost of keeping employees on when companies were unprofitable and stuff. And then before you know it, she's going to see this when she comes out, but I'm like buying her a Rolex for a gift. And like before I like, you know, for Christmas, it's going to come in like a week for her. And like from where I was like a year back and thinking of like how shit I thought my situation was before, I haven't even stopped to reflect on the success. And before you know it, I'm like buying a gift like that. Whereas before I'm like fucking divesting, you know, different investments or whatever.
You know what I can say that that's happened a lot is, you know, even though I didn't have like a losing year, you don't realize it, but you can make a lot of money in a short amount of time. Like it seems like there's like big bursts. It's like you're working. You don't realize. I mean, you're making a little bit, but then you'll have like just this 1 or 2 years where it's like this crazy, never lasts.
That's what happened to me.
Never lasts.
Yeah, it doesn't last.
Never lasts ever. I can tell people that. That's why, you know, me and my business partner are good together because, I mean, even when shit's like going amazing, we know, like he's been in business longer than me and had more, you know, been down and out a bunch of times. So it's a good relationship because we both know like it never lasts. Like, yes, this is amazing, but need to prepare for if something happens, like you don't want to lever up the company. You don't want to, you know, have,
it's going to be most tempting to lever up when you're making a ton of money.
You want to grow. And, you know, you just always know that it never lasts forever. And just because things change, you know, government, political markets disappear, especially with like how the tech's going now. It's like, there's industries that are just going to like slowly disappear each year. Yeah. Each year. And so,
yeah, and when people see somebody like yourself making a ton of money in a category, you're going to attract a bunch of competitors.
Always.
And so by nature, that industry might fragment too.
I had a dream last night that it's one of our products. I won't even say what company.
Oh, really?
There was a competitor in our piece of equipment. In my dream, there was like these backwoods, like hillbilly guys, and they had made this makeshift version. And I was just like, and they had like, you know, a certain amount of them already out there, and they were offering these really cheap prices. And it was just the craziest thing, but I remember it specifically. And it's like, you're trying to stop them. And it's like, okay, what we can do? We're going to build it on value and customer service and not lower our price. But like, I guess I was just been thinking about it a lot, but it's weird. That happened last night.
That's so funny that you bring that up because like a lot of people aren't ready to have nightmares about their business, right?
Yeah. Like I must've been thinking about that in the last month or so, but like really detailed like that, to have that. And I woke up, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. I've also found that some of my best ideas come when I'm sleeping. For a while, I was doing lucid dreaming. Tim Ferriss had explained how to do it.
What is that?
Lucid dreaming is when you are actively, like you make a plan, like, hey, I want to figure out a breakthrough for how to develop this new piece of machinery. So you go to bed and you come up with that intention before you go to sleep. And then while you're asleep, your consciousness will rise, like, you know, during one of your circadian rhythms. And then you'll become aware while you're sleeping, and you can kind of guide your dream in the direction you want. But it's like you're leveraging your subconscious mind, and so it will bring you know, this large data set that you've been gathering over the years and kind of like connect all the pieces together. And so I've had a lot of big breakthroughs doing that. And I bet you will have a big breakthrough because your mind was already thinking about it when you went to sleep. And so obviously it's trying to solve this challenge that you've given.
Yeah. Trying to, prevent something from happening, or, make yourself, think outside the box or something. It's like, okay, maybe we need to go this route or do this. I have all my best ideas in the mornings. I think like
Quiet time.
Maybe like I work out. And then, I'll listen to music on the way home or whatever. And I'll just be thinking, I'm not really listening to the music, but like it makes me not think about, I guess,
just kind of triggers
work.
flow.
Yeah. And I'll just always end up thinking of like some of my best ideas in the morning, or just in the first kind of like half of the day, like, 5 a.m. to like 10, 11 a.m. is like where I think I just come up with the most
creative space.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's not for me. Usually I'm thinking about all the shit I got to do that day. So my creative space is typically either when I get massages like weekly, and that's like I can always get into a really deep state of like meditation when I do that, or after work, right? When I'm walking my dog or whatever. And I've actually stopped listening to podcasts, stopped listening to audiobooks, etc., because I want to create space where the mind can just go where it wants, On
the massage thing, I really like them, but every time I do them, I get so like stuffed up if I'm face down, like where it's like,
oh my God, yeah, me too.
Like I like it, but then I'm like, for like an hour or two, I'm like kind of, I'm not going to say I'm like out of it, but I feel a little slower, like foggy, because it's like, it feels all stuffed up in here.
Well,
so
there's less oxygen, I think. Yeah, but
I literally like it, but then like that side effect I don't like of it.
I mean, that's your lymph nodes cleaning out.
Yeah. I guess maybe if I did it more often, maybe that would slowly start going away.
Yeah, for me, it only happens about 25% of the time these days.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't doing it regularly enough, and I was just doing it.
Well, and like if you're getting deep tissue massage, which is like the more intense massage, that's what will free that up. Whereas if you're getting like a Thai massage or like a oil massage, you're not going to have that happen. It's not going to break up as much toxins. So I usually mix it up. I don't go with just only deep tissue, because deep tissue, like that shit can be painful too.
Maybe that's what I was doing, because I had like a sports massage, like deep tissue
Yeah,
lady. She was
massage,
coming like once every 2 weeks or something to my house, and
yeah,
it was like messing me up for a little bit, for a couple hours. That's the only reason I like everything else about it. But like for 2 hours, I was like just kind of like clogged up and out of it a little bit.
Yeah, sports massage is not that relaxing either. They're like getting into these knots, and they're like breaking things up with their elbows. Like it can get pretty gnarly. So
that's probably why I need to do that, once every 3 weeks or something, and maybe just do less.
Yeah, try a less intense massage. I think that you'll find it to be a little bit less like congestive. But I mean, the same thing happens in yoga. A lot of spiritual practices, you will come up with phlegm.
That never happened to me in yoga.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to do yoga. I got into the hot yoga stuff for a little while.
Oh, hot yoga, nice.
Yeah, I was doing it just probably once a week. I wouldn't, I'd work out the rest of the week, but then I'd try to go once a week to do yoga. I don't know why I stopped. I had a girl come into the house that was a private teacher during COVID when everything was shut down. I remember she was coming to the house.
Hot yoga is incredible.
Yeah, I was doing boxing and then hot yoga. That because my trainer would open the gym, and so those are the two things I would do during when everything was shut down.
Crazy to think about. You had to like break the law to do yoga.
We were in my gym, or my trainer's gym. It's downtown Houston, old like concrete building. A bunch of professional guys train there. We pull up at like 5:30 a.m. and then the police like pull up. They see he locks the door. We go upstairs, but then they're banging on the door, and they're like, what are y'all doing? He's like, man, this is I own the gym, but it's like, it's one of my private clients. They were cool ultimately, but they're like, hey, we just want to make sure it wasn't like 50 people in here. I don't know.
Wow.
Whatever. It was just weird. It's like, dude, crazy, right?
I don't know. I have a pretty strong stance on that stuff.
I know
I think it's bullshit. I don't think they should be interrupting. Like you're just out getting in shape. Like why are you going to come give me a hard time about it? If I want to get sick, that's also my choice too.
I would agree with that. I mean, they ruined a lot of businesses. It was like a tough time for everybody. I mean, us too, but man, like to just make people.
I'd be surprised if it ever happens again. I don't think people will take.
It'll be a civil war. Like the people will revolt if that ever happens again.
The Texans will bring out their guns.
Texas and Florida.
Yeah, Florida man. Yeah, I don't think I would. I mean, I didn't even really cooperate at the time. I remember making myself a fake vaccine card, and I almost got caught with it in the airport. And they were serious about that. Like that's the kind of thing like you get in real trouble for.
Gentry was like, "This is it. This is how they're trying to control everybody. They're gonna give you a chip. You have to have a vaccine card to leave the country, and like And luckily, I never got it.
You didn't get vaccinated.
Neither did she. And I mean, I feel bad for people because a lot of them, their jobs made them do it. We didn't require anybody to do it. We were I guess you call it essential business, I guess, where we could stay open. Not like right away, but whenever they allowed people to open back up, I guess. And so we let everybody choose, like, come to work. You don't have to. And this is just in the corporate office. Everybody still is working in the field, but we'd all come to work. Everybody was fine. But man, it was a crazy time. Like I got lucky that I didn't need it to go make money. Right. Like some people, I feel bad. It's like, hey, you either do this or we're going to fire you. It's like, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. You're putting somebody's whole life on the line.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people, again, like I said earlier, like I think people became unintentional victims. Like
that's what I'm saying.
They weren't trying to be a part of this. They just happened to be mandated into it somehow, which is fucked up, like you're saying, and like kind of take people's choice away.
Their livelihood, right? It's like, well, shit, I can't lose my job. Like I can't take care of my family. So I guess I'll do it. Like,
yeah, the whole reason I made a fake vaccine card is because I was going to Indonesia to do business and I couldn't fly without it. And so if I want to make money, I needed to have that card. And so I broke the rules, but I'm completely unforgiving and unapologetic about it. Like
but it's like, okay, they knew that you could still get COVID if you had a vaccine. So it's like, so if this card is going to tell you if you have COVID or not to get on the plane. Like, it was just the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah. And I was snowboarding in Jackson Hole before COVID was a thing. I was there in February, came back, got super sick when I got home in March. And I was like bedridden. I didn't understand what was happening. And then I found out that I had COVID. I was like one of the first people to get COVID. And after that, I was like superhuman. I didn't get COVID for like 2 years. And then the next time I did, it was super minor. And my immunity was just strong. And so I was like, that's fine with me. That I got my vaccination. I earned it, you know?
Me and Gentry got it at the same time when we got it. And I feel like it was in the first year, August-ish, like of that first year. And so it was pretty bad.
Yeah,
we're both laying in bed. Yeah. We're both laying in bed and I lost my taste. Which was weird as shit.
Yeah, that's weird.
But after that, I didn't ever really get it. If I did get it again, it was really mild. I just didn't know that I had it. But it was just the one time.
There's just so many studies coming out these days that are showing that it is linked to early death and to all these other conditions. My brother-in-law, who was a super, super loudmouth about get vaccinated, like made everybody, like they wouldn't, we had like 6 feet rules during Christmas time, that time of year, and he was the enforcer of it. He got a 28-inch blood clot from his knee up to his like shoulder, a freaking blood clot all the way down. And the J&J vaccine is notorious for that, right? That's what he had. And he's in a freaking wheelchair now, dude.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, it's a little fucked up to think like, you know, you kind of called that on yourself, but like.
Yeah, I don't know any firsthand people, just like, I mean, I don't know anybody that specifically had a reaction like that, but from other people, like you said, like your brother or their friend or their cousin or their mom, like I've heard a lot of that. I don't know anybody that specifically something happened to.
Yeah, and last night we were talking about my dad, how he passed away at just 73 from a heart attack, and 2 years before that was COVID, and him and my mom, they did not get vaccinated or anything. They got like the monitor that shows like your heart rate or your respiration rate. They both got COVID, and they're like in their 70s. I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I thought it was going to be really bad. They both survived just fine. They pulled through it just fine. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law over here, this is my sister's husband, right? He takes a vaccine and he gets this like life-altering condition from it.
Terrible.
And like, how do you take out a blood clot that long? I mean,
does he have any regrets of doing it, or is he
he
doesn't think it's from that specifically?
No, I don't think that he thinks it's from that. And like, look, it's just hypothetical for me to say that it is, but it seems pretty coincidental, right?
Really weird, right? And then
he's not a healthy guy. He's got a big pot belly, and like he's like the hippie type who drinks, you know, craft beers and all that shit. And I mean, look, maybe they're interconnected, maybe they're not, but like that happened to him and it didn't happen to my mom or my dad or myself. So,
well, and a bunch of other people, because that story started coming out time and time again. Like,
yeah, it's really sad. And again, this is why I'm so excited for this new era of health in America, because the thinking is going from preventative to like from intravenous to preventative, right? Like,
Yeah, don't just show up and treat it. It's like, hey, how can we prevent it? Yeah, hopefully, that like turns into mass market, and it's not just the select few people that we know or we follow, or
yeah,
hopefully that translates to like the mass market of people out there, and then hopefully they are able to reduce a lot of whatever the chemicals are in all this food. Is probably the main thing that they could do to affect the general public. It's like if they just fix a lot of the food, people would probably be way healthier, and then way more preventative without even knowing it, right? Like, yeah.
I mean, people they're like, I went to Italy for the summer and I ate pasta all day.
You hear that, right?
Right. And then it's like, here, you touch a freaking pasta and you got like bigger hips,
and
right?
swollen,
yeah.
And you don't feel good. And
I think that we just end up accidentally consuming a lot of stuff that, like, for example, grain causes inflammation because the seeds germinate, like the ground up seeds germinate, and that's why you get like inflammation in your knees and your shoulders and stuff.
That was a big one for me when I did all the food sensitivity testing.
Oh, did you?
I thought I ate healthy. I was like, oh, I eat pretty healthy, and not that I didn't eat like definitely healthier than like the average person. But when I went to the doctor and he told me, he's like, hey, let's do this test, and I'm like, oh, there's no way it's gonna make me feel that good. But when I cut out all the grains and I cut out certain other things that were causing a lot of inflammation, felt like twice as good. And I didn't change anything else. I mean, that was just like one other step that like I was like, holy shit, I feel that much better.
Wow. Yeah, I always imagine like how much energy somebody like you must have, because it's like you've isolated all the things that make you feel good and removed all the things that don't.
I don't see the big jumps anymore, like something like that, because but
incremental.
Yeah, we talked about it. Is like, okay, so the cold plunge thing, I do it, or my routine, I'm strict about it, so you can't tell like huge differences. But when you look back or you go out of town for a week, you're like, oh shit, it did make a huge difference. It's just now that you're used to feeling that way, you don't really realize like all this stuff. Yeah. And so I realize it when we travel or I go somewhere else. I'm like, man, like after, it doesn't take like, it's not one day, but after about 2 or 3 days, like I'm like, it's way different than being at home and doing my routine, like way different. I feel way worse.
Yeah, that the one thing that I learned from the really hard phase of my entrepreneurship, right, when like my fitness app was I was running out of runway. The one thing that kept me solid, sane, and like able to work effectively was my diet and fitness and mindfulness habits. And so like that's why I love all that stuff, because that can be your rock during everything else in your life might be fluctuating, but that could be like your baseline, your bedrock that will always keep you like level-headed, good energy, low tension.
I always had that too. Like, no matter what, I would always exercise. I would always have some form of like fitness, even throughout that 25 years. And honestly, in my 19 to 22, when I was like really partying and making a lot of bad decisions, if I didn't have working out, I probably would have like done it every single day of the week and like really even gone down further. But I always knew in my mind, like, man, I don't want to mess up. Like, trust me, a lot of bad decisions, but it would always like reel me back in a little bit. Like, I don't want to go, too far. I still need to work out this week. I still again, I'm not working out, every day like I do now, but it still kept me in my mind like, okay, don't make too many bad decisions. Like, you still need to keep something, your life on track in general. And then I never let business get in the way of that either. I would always make sure like that didn't affect like what I was doing at work or business or whatever.
Yeah, those are real trade-offs that you have to make. I mean, in order to go to the gym, you have to cut out 2 hours out of your work day or 2 hours out of family time, whatever else it is. But that sacrifice, like you want that continuity, because like I remember when things were getting really bad, like, and I was like going through really tough times, I was like, why am I even working out? Everything else fucking sucks. I remember that's what I was thinking at the time, but now I look back on it, I'm like, damn, I'm glad I stuck with it, because that is the only thing that I had that was keeping things together when everything else was crumbling. So if I would have given up that last piece of bedrock, it would have all just crumbled beneath me and probably resulted much worse.
I think that when people, they don't realize it, but if they do sacrifice, it's not a sacrifice, but if they do take the time for that hour and a half, whatever, it'll actually benefit all their areas of life, right? It's like you're going to have more energy. You're going to be nicer to your wife, your kids. Like, and so it's like, if you don't do it, you're doing yourself a disservice and your family really, because somebody that doesn't have as much energy, angry all the time, out of shape, doesn't feel good because of all those reasons. Their family gets like the ultimate, or coworkers, or boss, or employees if it's a business owner.
Yeah, for me, it was my employees. I would drink a lot of caffeine, and I wasn't really like staying physically in shape at this one point, and I was short tempered with my employees
Yeah.
because high caffeine levels, high stress levels, a lot going on, and physically I didn't feel that great, and so I just kind of set up an environment to become reactive, and so now it's like. It's a non-negotiable. I'm like, and if I don't go to the gym, I know, hey, you got to be extra patient today, because you're not gonna like have that kind of natural disposition for it.
Well, I don't know how long we've been going for, but
Yeah,
I
man.
probably could talk to you all day. I don't know.
It's a great conversation, man. I think people will definitely get a lot from it.
Yeah. So, man, I appreciate you coming. Where does someone find you? Because I do like the business model. I think it's really cool, and I like the guarantee of like, hey, we'll do this, or we're gonna work till we're free. We're gonna work for free until we get you there. So it's really cool. So, where can people find you, or what's the name of the company that they can look up if they do want to get into the app building?
Yeah, if you're a founder, I mean, even if you don't even have an app yet, happy to help guide you along. But viralapp.launch.com, VIRAL, viralapp.launch.com. Got all the resources there. On Instagram, it's J Maxim, ITS J Maxim, and yeah, just happy to help other founders out there kind of get to that next level. So appreciate
Sweet,
you
man.
having me on the show, Shawn.
Yeah,
This has
man.
been awesome, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Great times.
Thank you.
Cheers.